Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is L. Lauren, and I am the author of the story you're about to listen to. So before we get into the story this week, I know it's been about a month since I've posted a video, and as most of you guys know, my best friend and co-author passed away in early December. So that kind of will change things moving forward with the channel, but I will talk about that in another video. So anyway, this story, um, because I still have my Christmas stories, you're still gonna get them, and I understand that it's January. Like, you're just gonna have to deal with it. This is actually one of my favorite Christmas stories. It's called A Christmas Miracle. I wrote it probably in early 2021 or 2020. It was a pandemic time period story. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say pandemic. Um, it has many of my favorite tropes in it. It has, let's see what we call it, a divorced partner, a widower. It has opposites attract, opposite ends of the track. So one's rich, one's poor. It has the I don't want to call it one bed issue, but kind of like a I don't even know how to explain it. The trope where someone comes in and saves the day and ends up giving them the person's house because they have all this space and no one to share it with, and the other person can't get a room at the inn because it's the day before Christmas. That's basically the premise. I told you the whole premise. There it is. Also, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. It's a good story. I really like it. I can't recall all of the tropes right now, but I definitely ended up reading it over again before I did the edit for it, like a month ago. But yeah, so this is called A Christmas Miracle. I hope you guys enjoy it. I also hope you guys have had a great holiday and a swimming new year.
A Christmas Family. Bakersville Christmas Book 2. L. Lauren. Chapter 1. Snow had fallen in the unfamiliar town, and after walking in and out of 5 hotels, Chang was at a loss. The little girl at his side squeezed his hand as they stepped out of the 5th building and onto the paved sidewalk, peering across the street at a collection of corporate high-rises decorated with lights and angels. Lee swallowed around a knot in his throat, and the little girl turned rosy cheeks up to the man's face. "Daddy. We should go home now," she suggested, innocence shining in her eyes. Her soft words broke Lee, and he squeezed his eyes shut as a wave of emotion went through him. He knew he had done the right thing, but his timing had been off. But it also didn't matter. He wasn't having another holiday season, sitting across from the man who made every waking moment in his presence a living hell. "We can't go home tonight, sweetie." Lee schooled his trembling voice and turned to the little girl, crouching in front of her and adjusting her jacket on her shoulders and her slouchy knit hat on her head. Her feathery curls poked out from under the hat, framing her round face and pink cheeks. "Why not?" "Because we're here right now, and home is very far away." But Wing Wing is at home." "No," Lee corrected. "Wing Wing is in your suitcase in the trunk of the car, remember?" She shook her head. "Wing Wing Jr. is in the car. Wing Wing is with Papa." Lee sucked in a breath and exhaled it, stamping down his racing heart. Papa to her was a nightmare of a man to him. It had been a good relationship, years prior, when Lee was blinded by the unyielding affection and comfort the man offered. "Okay, well, I can have Papa send you Wing Wing, or we can buy a new Wing Wing." But if we buy a new Wing Wing, it'll be Wing Wing 3. "Yes." At this point, it was easier to agree than protest. Lee stood up again and peered around the area as he led the little girl back to his vehicle and buckled her into the back seat. "I'm hungry." "Because you didn't eat your snack." "I don't want cheese and crackers. I want ice cream." "Honey, you can't have ice cream right now. Ice cream is for dessert after dinner." "But I want it." "I understand and acknowledge this, but because you want something doesn't mean you get it. You get everything you want." "No, my love, I don't." Lee closed the back door of the worn-in sedan and climbed into the driver's side, cruising down the decorated streets as the little girl pouted and wailed. "Icing," he muttered under his breath, adjusting the back mirrors. He circled the town, finding only one hotel left. Unlike the last 5 he had popped into, this final hotel was a luxury hotel. The smallest room was well out of his price range. Hell, the peppermints in the lobby were well out of his price range. Lee rolled into the parking lot, squeezing his vehicle between a luxury SUV and a stretched limousine, and climbed out, retrieving the little girl and advancing towards the door. Chapter 2. Wyatt Myers folded a newspaper and tucked it under his arm as he stepped out of a conference room and into the lobby of his hotel. His square-toed loafers squeaked on the marbled floor, and he tipped a steaming mug of peppermint mocha coffee to his lips. As he reached the exit to his hotel, he paused in front of a decorated evergreen and stared at it blankly. "What is this?" He scanned his eyes around the lobby, resting them on the woman behind the front desk. She wrung her hands. "It's a Christmas tree, Mr. Myers." Her voice lifted an octave. "We put it up for the guests to make it seem more festive inside." "Take it down," he muttered, snagging another gulp of his coffee, "tonight." "But the guests really appreciate it. Many people have commented on it." She scurried from behind the front desk and sauntered over to the tree, picking at the decorations. "We were thinking about letting each young guest make their own ornament for it." "Take it down. I have stated explicitly that I don't want holiday decorations all over my hotel. It has been a rule for years." The woman cleared her throat. "Well, it's only been enforced for the last 2 years. Ricky always let us." "Ricky isn't here, so he can't make the rules." Wyatt's sour mood deepened, and he turned narrowed eyes towards the tree. "If it's not out of here by tomorrow, I will take care of it myself." The woman sealed her lips and sighed, bowing reluctantly. "Yes, sir." She returned to the front desk as Wyatt stepped out into the winter air. The frosty bite reddened his cheeks and the ball of his nose, and he retrieved leather gloves from the pocket of his heavy blazer, wringing them out and sliding them over his fingers as he walked around the building, following the sidewalk from the entrance to the parking lot. "Why can't we stay here, Daddy?" a little girl demanded. She stomped her booted feet on the ground, and her wavy dark hair billowed around her tanned features. A man crouched in front of her, pulling her jacket closed and zipping it. His tired eyes searched her features. "Because the place is full. There aren't any extra beds," he explained, tone filled to the brim with fatherly patience. The pair blocked the sidewalk, and Wyatt sucked in a breath, pausing several feet away from them. The man didn't notice Wyatt's presence as he continued adjusting the little girl's clothes. "How about we go for ice cream, and you tell me all the things you want to eat on Christmas Day?" "Will Papa be around for Christmas Day?" "I don't think so, sweetheart." The crying started. First the little girl bubbled with short breaths, then she graduated to a soft whine, and finally the dam broke and her cries pierced the air. Wyatt winced and the girl's guardian sprouted new gray hairs, but didn't stop the girl from crying. Instead, he stood up and looked around, wetting his full lips as he scanned the area. When his eyes landed on Wyatt, Wyatt's heart skipped a beat, and he gulped a ragged breath afterwards, placing a hand on his chest. His cheeks warmed as he cleared his throat. "I'm sorry about her," the man apologized, crunching naturally tailored eyebrows to the center of his forehead. "She's having a rough day." Wyatt waved a hand. "It's fine." What are you doing here?" The man shrugged broad shoulders, jamming his hands into his pockets and flicking his eyes back to the building. The muscles in his neck flexed as his daughter hit an ear-splitting note. "It's nothing. We should be on our way. We have to get home." The girl's wails continued, shifting from unintelligible noisemaking to words. "Daddy, you said we can't go home." She sniffled, latching onto his leg and burying her face in his pants. Wyatt looked from the virile man in front of him to the little girl, and then back up to the man. The man's features withered. "You need a place to stay?" "We'll find something. I'm sorry to bother you." He waved a hand and chided his daughter. "Come on, honey. He rubbed the girl's back and hobbled towards his vehicle. Wyatt followed along the sidewalk, stretching the distance between them until they bumped into each other again. The stranger had parked his old sedan right next to Wyatt's day vehicle, and he had the passenger door wide open as he peeled the little girl out of her puffy jacket and buckled her into her car seat. She yammered excitedly, recovered from her earlier bout of tears, and the man responded as any parent would. He responded with polite consideration mixed with relaxed indifference. When she was buckled in, he closed the door and turned around, taking one step towards the sidewalk again before he paused. Wyatt stood on the sidewalk, blocking his path around the vehicle. The man dragged his eyes up and sealed his full lips. "This is your vehicle?" Wyatt tipped his head towards the sedan. "Yeah. It runs, and there's no point in tossing it out if it still has a motor and wheels, right?" Without his daughter beside him, he was younger and even sexier. A fitted shirt hugged his thick torso, and a heavy unzipped jacket stretched his broad shoulders. His jeans effortlessly tailored to his form, and well-worn boots added to his casual look. Wyatt nibbled his bottom lip and quirked his eyebrows. "You said you need a place to stay?" "I'll find something, but thanks for your concern." "Around here? 4 days before Christmas? How many hotels have you tried?" 6. The man hooked his thumbs in his belt loops. "But I'm sure there are more hotels around here. Or someone could get a cancellation." "There aren't? And when?" "Even our cancellation list has a waiting list." "You're—" The man blinked, cutting his eyes to the multi-level hotel before back at Wyatt. "You work here?" "No. I own it." The corner of Wyatt's lips quirked up. "Wow. You're, young, relatively speaking, I know. I inherited, but it's complicated. Anyway, I live in a really big house by myself. It's similar to a hotel, and it's basically empty." "You are inviting me to stay at your house?" "Well, yeah. You and your daughter. It's huge, so we don't have to talk to each other or anything." Wyatt's cheeks flushed and he sucked in a breath. "But you're kind of out of other options, so." The stranger glanced at his daughter before looking back at Wyatt, chewing his bottom lip. "You are unfortunately not wrong, but I don't want to stay at your place for free. I can't pay you, but I can cook." "You don't have to pay me." Wyatt thumbed the top of his mug. "So, it's down Cupcake Avenue to the left. You can't really miss it. Really big house with a gate and everything." "Awesome." The guy chuckled, combing his fingers through bone-straight hair. "I'm Lee Chang." He stepped closer to the sidewalk and extended a hand. "Wyatt Myers." He took his hand and shook it. The man had a firm grip and rough, strong hands to match. Wyatt shivered. "Yeah. Okay? Nice to meet you." "Yeah. My daughter's name is Amara." "I heard." "Yeah. I'm sorry about earlier. She's moving is difficult." Lee shrugged. "Anyway, I guess I'm not in much of a position to refuse your offer, so lead the way." "Right. Sure." Wyatt's cheeks warmed again, and he shuffled past Lee, unlocking his vehicle and slipping inside. Chapter 3. When Lee climbed into his vehicle, he sighed, watching the other man climb into his SUV and rev the engine. It purred, unlike Lee's car, which rattled at every bump. The man stole a glimpse of his sleeping daughter as he reversed out of the parking space behind Wyatt. With the softest of smiles on his face, he turned back around and merged into traffic, following the other man from the hotel and through the town. He followed Wyatt to the largest home on the block. With 3 levels, an expansive front yard, and a gate, Wyatt's house was luxury at its finest. The gate mechanically opened as their vehicles approached. The SUV entered first, and Lee entered after him. He parked his vehicle beside Wyatt's and climbed out again. Amara snoozed still. Wyatt slipped out of the luxury SUV, hopping to the ground and adjusting his clothes on his slim figure. Lee eyed him, noting the pink tips of his pale fingers and the faint flush of pink tinting his high cheekbones, magnifying the brightness of his watery blue eyes. "Hi." Ah, I can call my mechanic about your vehicle. It was making a noise. Yeah, it always sounds like that. It's fine. So, Amara's still sleeping. I should probably get her in a bed somewhere. Right. Sure. Can I help? Wyatt rubbed his hands together, shrugging his slender shoulders. Yeah. Can you get the stuff out of the car and get the door for me? I'm just going to carry her inside. Lee unbuckled the girl's seatbelt and scooped her into his arms with little fuss. He draped her jacket over her frail shoulders and nestled her against his neck, breathing in the baby powder scent on her skin and the fruity notes of her favorite shampoo. I will have my doorman get your bags, Wyatt offered, and I will show you to a room. With a hand on the girl's back, he followed Wyatt inside the house, through the main room, and into a decorated bedroom. Equipped with a desk and a window sitting area, it fit for a little girl. Lee eased Amara onto the twin bed in the center of the room and tucked the covers around her, kissing the top of her head and tiptoeing out of the room. Will she be okay? Wyatt lifted both eyebrows. Concern painted his features, more concern than the girl's other father had shown in fact. Yeah. She'll be fine. She's just really tired is all. It's been a long few days, and she usually gets a nap right around this time anyway. Oh, okay. How long does she normally sleep? I don't let her sleep past 4 o'clock. Otherwise, she'll never lay down for bedtime. And bedtime is? Preferably 7 o'clock, but sometimes around 8. Wyatt nodded. Oh, okay. Yeah. Kids. Super fun, Lee teased. Wyatt flashed a little smile. Yeah. So, I wasn't sure if you wanted to sleep in the same room as her or another place. Most of my rooms are in a transitional phase, but I could clean one for you. Don't worry about me, I could sleep on the couch. You shouldn't. I will clean a room for you. I will have someone clean a room for you. Lee crunched his eyebrows. Sure, okay. Not used to the whole hired help thing. He laughed, chewing his bottom lip as he moved past Wyatt. Usually, this is the time where I start prepping for dinner. I usually have something different than her. She likes kid food after all, and I like eating like an adult. Oh. I usually have my butler order something. Well, Lee smirked, you're not having takeaway tonight because I'm a chef and the least I can do is cook for my host. Wyatt's cheeks blossomed with color and he touched them, flicking his gaze downward at the same time. You don't have to cook for me. But I want to. Show me to your kitchen. I bet it's impressive. I suppose. Wyatt led him down the hall and into the kitchen of a chef's dreams, with 2 ovens, an expansive stove, and a huge refrigerator. Damn, Lee whispered. This is a fucking kitchen right here. I suppose it isn't bad. Wyatt leaned against the stretched marble-countered island as Lee moved around the room. He swiped his fingers over the counters and surveyed the appliances in awe. It's fucking nice. This is the kind of kitchen I could make a Christmas dinner in. The words sailed out of his mouth, then he paused and sucked in a breath. We're not staying that long though. We'll get a hotel before Christmas. I don't want to intrude on your Christmas plans or anything. You won't intrude. I didn't really have anything planned. You and your daughter can do whatever you would like for Christmas. I can stay out of the way. You weren't going to celebrate Christmas? Wyatt shook his head, shrugging his shoulders. I don't really care for the holidays. Well, I have a kid, so I'm pretty much obligated to participate in all holidays. Even Easter. Even Easter? Oh yes. Easter is a very important holiday. Lee laughed. So, Amara. Lee smirked. Yeah, I was waiting for when you'd asked. Everyone asks. She's my adopted daughter, but my husband is her biological father. Donated eggs. Wyatt's neutral expression turned into a frown. What is it? Nothing. Nothing. He waved his hands and shook his head. So you're married? Well, Lee winced. Technically, yes, but I'm in the process of getting a divorce. Got it. His frown stayed. Trust me. I'm getting a divorce. The marriage is over. It's just money and paperwork. Money? Filing for divorce isn't free, and considering Amara isn't mine biologically, I'm sure it's going to be a hell of a divorce case, but I can't let that selfish, careless jackass have her. Wyatt blinked. Oh yeah? Well, if you get a good lawyer, then it should be an easy case if he's all the things you say. I have a lawyer. I could see if he can help. You have a lawyer. Why? I just do. With the hotel and the house and everything. It's been necessary. Would you like me to ask for you or not? Yeah. Ask for me, I guess. Lee yanked open the refrigerator and gasped. What the hell? The whole thing was empty like new, complete with sparkling shelves and the heavy scent of bleach. There's nothing in here. Oh. Well, I said I don't cook. No, you said you order takeout. Correct. I don't cook. When's the last time you used your kitchen? Lee closed the refrigerator door and turned around, directing his attention back to Wyatt. It's been a while. How long? Perhaps close to 2 years, I guess. 2 years? Good Lord. Lee rubbed his face. Okay, I figured you would have things to make here, but yeah, clearly no. So, I need to go to the store. You can take my card. Your car? No, it's fine. I'll take mine. No, my bank card. To purchase the groceries? Wyatt lifted his eyebrows. Oh yeah, no. I can't do that, Lee stammered. He had roughly $40 in his pocket, which he could stretch for a good amount of groceries, but nothing lavish or impressive. Wyatt's offer tempted him, and he bit his bottom lip. I shouldn't. I can buy some things. No, you're my guest. I will get the groceries. You're already giving us a place to sleep, and potentially a lawyer for me too. I can't accept the groceries. Wyatt shook his head, pushing off the counter and approaching Lee. With each step, Lee's heart skipped faster. He didn't know what to expect. He didn't even know what he wanted, but Wyatt got his blood going, and it had been a long while since a man could. Years of fighting and months of hostility had dried up Lee's sex drive, but being away from his husband and being with Wyatt changed that. His body woke up again. He had himself back. He wasn't the caregiver to a little girl to Wyatt. He was a person, a sexual being. And Wyatt's body so close to his reminded him just how long it had been since he'd been intimate with another person. A year at least, but the time blurred together for him. It could have been longer, but it wasn't important. You said you would cook for me if I let you stay here. Wyatt's blue eyes locked on Lee's. Yeah, I did. Then you cook for me and let me buy the groceries. Wyatt slipped a hand into his back pocket, retrieving a leather wallet and thumbing through the folds until he uncovered a black bank card and presented it to Lee. Lee stared at it as he sucked in a shallow breath, nostrils flaring. You trust me with your card. I shouldn't? No, you should. Never mind. Lee took the bank card. Thanks. You can take my vehicle too, if you'd like. I probably should. Since if Amara stays here, you need to have access to the car seat just in case. It was Lee's turn to blush, and his cheeks warmed quickly as they hashed out plans and traded keys. Wyatt pocketed Lee's light keyring, and Lee cradled Wyatt's remote key. Thanks. Yes. I'm just going to get some basics to get us through tonight. I can make a better list for the next few days. Sure. We can go out tomorrow and get the rest of the groceries, and anything else you and Amara need to make yourselves comfortable here. Just the groceries. I didn't see any toys or playthings for her. We could get her some of those. No. You don't need to spend any extra money on her. I know you have your own things to purchase. I really don't, actually. You shouldn't spend it on us. I promise we will be out of your way in a few days. You should get groceries before she wakes up and realizes you left her with a stranger." Lee chuckled. "Right. I should. Yeah. I'll get going." Lee scrubbed the back of his head and slipped away from Wyatt. "Call me if you need anything or if she wakes up, okay? My information is on our luggage." "Cool." Wyatt turned around, lingering in the kitchen as Lee walked backwards to the exit. After a little wave, Lee ducked out of the kitchen completely and moved towards the front door. Chapter 4. Lee had returned with enough groceries for dinner and breakfast, and had unpacked a collection of fresh ingredients after returning Wyatt's card to him. When the little girl woke up, she chattered at them both from a seat at the kitchen table while her father buzzed around the counters, slicing vegetables and cooking. Before long, savory and sweet smells drifted from covered pots, and Wyatt's stomach rumbled. His heart rumbled too, hungry after years of neglect. It had been only him for so long that he had forgotten how it felt to have someone else in his space, but Lee and Amara brought a liveliness and a freshness to the old house with their smiles and laughter. Lee served everyone and sat down across from Wyatt, picking at his food and stealing glances at the other man. "Do you like it?" he questioned, biting into a fresh dinner roll. Wyatt nibbled seasoned string beans and dug his fork into fluffy potatoes. "Yes. It's really good." "Really?" Uneasiness seeped into his voice. "Absolutely. I just expected something, different since you're a chef." "Ah." Lee's cheekbones warmed and a lopsided smile touched his lips. He cut his eyes towards his daughter, studying her messy plate of potatoes, plain chicken, and sliced carrots before returning his attention to Wyatt. "I wanted to make something simple and quick." Yeast rolls from scratch isn't what someone would consider quick. Wyatt broke his roll apart. Curls of steam wafted from the inside. He swiped one end in the white gravy topping the potatoes. "But everything's good." "It's something," Wyatt paused, jaw clenching. "It's something I like." His eyes circled the room. He had cooking supplies and baking supplies, but they had collected dust over the last 2 years. He hadn't so much as made a batch of cookies since he lost his partner, and the kitchen smelled like the man for years. Remembering his past brought a knot in his throat. His partner would have loved Lee's meal. Wyatt finished his food and dumped his plate in the sink as Lee coaxed the little girl through her vegetables. The child left the plate half-eaten, but rather than toss the meal, Lee covered it with plastic wrap and placed it inside the microwave as she bounded from the kitchen back to her room, leaving the two men alone again. "Thanks for being so accommodating." Lee chewed his bottom lip. "Why wouldn't I be? I invited you, after all." Lee shrugged. "No reason. He shook his head. "Tomorrow we should get groceries and toys for her to play with." "You don't have to get her toys. How else is she going to amuse herself around here? She can use her imagination. Or maybe a coloring book from the dollar store. It's fine. I can't ask you to spend extra money on us. I want my guests to be comfortable. I'll get her some toys. Tell her they are my gifts." Lee rinsed the dishes and blotted his hands dry as Amara bounded back into the kitchen, breezing past Wyatt and latching onto her father's leg again. "Daddy. Can he read me a story before bed?" "Can who, sweetheart?" Lee lifted his eyebrows. Amara looked at Wyatt and then back at Lee. "Please?" "Honey, I can't make him read you a story. You have to ask him. Plus, he may not have any of your favorite books right now." "He can make up a story," she countered. "He may not want to make up a story." "But why not?" "Because?" "It's fine. I can make up a story," Wyatt interjected. "I'd be happy to tell you a bedtime story." "See, Daddy. He wants to tell me a story." Lee mouthed a thank you and Wyatt shrugged. "Amara, honey, get ready for your bath. Take your clothes off and go wait for me in the bathroom." "Okay." The girl stripped out of her clothes in the kitchen, leaving them in a pile in the center of the floor as Lee's cheeks filled with color. He looked helplessly towards Wyatt. For a moment Wyatt was equally baffled, but then whatever fatherly instincts he had inside kicked in, and he motioned to the clothes on the floor. "Amara?" He tested the strength of his authority. The girl spun on her heels and looked at him. Her doe eyes were wide with innocence as she impressed her good behavior on him. "Pick up your clothes and take them to the bathroom with you." She directed her eyes down to her clothes and back at Wyatt before bobbing her head and scooping everything but one sock into her arms. Then she toddled out of the kitchen again. "My God, thank you. It's no problem. She's a child." "Yeah. Her papa used to yell at her about it." He thought it was inappropriate, I guess." "She's a child." Wyatt smiled. "Yeah. Let me go get her bath done. You need time to think of a good story." Wyatt chuckled. "I do. I'm new to this child bedtime routine." "Don't worry. It's fairly easy, but don't let her rope you into a song. Sometimes she tries. You can say no." "Okay." Smiling, Lee ducked out of the kitchen and jogged down the hall. Wyatt listened to the low hum of his voice as Lee ran the bathwater and talked with the girl through her bath. His easy smile dropped away as he let his mind wander back to his past. He could have had this life. It had been a possibility just on the horizon, until fate intervened in the worst possible way. Tears brimmed his eyes, but he sucked them back as Lee and Amara returned to the kitchen. The girl, now dressed in coverall bunny pajamas, jumped into Wyatt's lap. "It's story time," she announced. Lee paused at the kitchen entrance, folding his arms across his chest. He had lost his shirt, likely to water damage from the bath, and stood bare-chested in the entryway, thick arms crossed over his toned chest. Wyatt's breath hitched when he noticed the other man, and he swallowed, clearing his throat. "Why, yes. It's story time. Go get in bed. I will be there to tuck you in a second." "Okay." Amara kissed her father's cheek and left without fuss. "She really wants her story," Lee observed. "I really can't thank you enough for this." "Don't thank me." Wyatt eased from his seat and approached the kitchen exit, squeezing past Lee and inhaling his scent. He smelled like cloves and baby powder, and Wyatt loved it. "Sure. I'm going to finish cleaning up the kitchen and start getting ready for bed. I'll find a shirt." "The other." "Oh no. You don't have to," Wyatt waved his hand. You look fine, good." "You're fine." Pinching the bridge of his nose, he moved down the hall and entered Amara's room. One long, winding story later, Wyatt tiptoed his way out of the girl's bedroom and left the door cracked, with a sliver of light shining on her snoozing face. Wyatt sighed as he entered the main body of the house. "Lee?" he stage whispered, projecting his raspy voice as loud as possible. "In the living room," Lee whispered back. "How'd it go?" The man switched to his normal voice when Wyatt entered the room. "Is she asleep?" "Finally, yes. I have no idea what my story was about, but she liked it." Wyatt scrubbed the back of his head. "Welcome to fatherhood." Lee chuckled. "I found some old sheets in the closet. I figured you wouldn't mind, and I just made a bed out here." "It's fine. Tomorrow, I can do something about a room for you. I wasn't expecting company, of course, and the only room available was the room Amara's in." "Right." Lee nodded. "I won't ask why you've got a perfectly made-up little girl's room. Your life isn't my business, but hey, Oh, right. Yes, sorry. Get some rest. I'll see you in the morning." Lee smiled, squeezing Wyatt's shoulder, and searched his eyes. His gaze stole Wyatt's breath. "Thanks again for everything." With a weak nod, Wyatt stepped out of the living room and wandered to his bedroom, drowning in his king-size bed and falling asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. For the first time in a long time, his sleep was dreamless and peaceful, and he woke the next morning feeling well rested. He lay in bed for a while after he woke up, listening to Amara and Lee moving through the house. The little girl had no regard for the rest of the inhabitants, and despite Lee continuously begging her to lower her voice, Wyatt heard every word out of her mouth. She relayed Wyatt's story to Lee, and Lee listened like a father, making sounds and asking polite questions during her retelling. Hearing them brought tears to his eyes, but he wiped them away as quickly as they formed. As he wiped the third wave of tears from his face, there was a knock at his door. Lee's voice accompanied the knock. "I made breakfast. I can't imagine you're still asleep," with Amara yelling through the house. "I'm awake. There's breakfast when you're ready. I made it special for you, too." Wyatt threw himself out of the bed and tugged a shirt over his head before yanking his bedroom door open. Lee's own t-shirt stretched across his form, cuffing at his thick biceps and around his corded neck. "What did you make?" "You'll have to come to the kitchen and find out." Lee winked and lured him out of his room with a bright smile. Wyatt knuckled his eyes and followed Lee down the hall and into the kitchen, posting himself at the front of the table. Amara looked up from her plate and smiled. "Good mornin'. Daddy made savvy eggs." "Janbong." "Janbing," Lee corrected as he slid a fluffy, savory-smelling egg onto an empty plate. "What is janbing?" "Savvy eggs." Amara giggled. "Savory." Lee slid another egg onto a third plate. He placed one plate in front of Wyatt and the other in front of an empty chair, which he pulled away from the table and sat down in. "Ah. Savory eggs." "Pretty much. A savory crepe instead of a sweet one. It's a Chinese dish. You said you wanted something more unique, so, yeah. Janbing. My mom used to make them all the time when I was growing up." Wyatt bit into it, rolling it around in his mouth before chewing and swallowing. He nodded. "It's different but good." Lee smiled. "Good." The two men ate while Amara filled the silence with her own voice, talking animatedly at them both and recounting her dream this time. Wyatt and Lee stole playful glances at each other, meeting each other's eyes and flushing before looking away and pretending it never happened. Once Amara finished her food, Lee cleared his throat. "Sweetheart, are you finished?" "Yeah, but I want to tell Mr. Watt about my favorite ponies." "You told him all about your dream and your favorite colors. Now you need to get dressed so we can do errands." "Ponies first," she held up a slender finger. "Ponies after you get dressed." "Please," she whined. Lee ate the last bites of his food and collected both of their plates, ignoring the beginnings of a temper tantrum. Amara looked at Wyatt as her bottom lip trembled and her eyebrows met each other in the center of her face. Wyatt looked down at his own plate, slicing and finishing his crepe. He joined Lee at the sink, slipping his plate in soapy water. "Thank you for breakfast." He bit the inside of his cheek and squeezed Lee's bicep. "You're welcome. I'll be ready for errands in 30 minutes. Lee nodded. "Let me finish up in here and get Amara dressed, and we'll be ready too." Chapter 5. They transferred Amara's car seat from Lee's beat-up vehicle to Wyatt's luxury SUV, and exchanged keys. Lee took the driver's seat, and Wyatt sat in front of Amara in the passenger seat, as Lee reversed out of the driveway and cruised back into the town. Lee looked good behind the wheel of Wyatt's SUV with strong hands gripping the steering wheel, and his easy confidence spilling out of him. Lee was a father, but he also was a man. A virile and sexy man. "You have a plan for the places you want to go." He flicked mono-lidded eyes towards Wyatt as the town advanced on them. "Toy store." Amara chirped. "There's an outdoor shopping center not far from here. I figured we could get everything from there." "Everything?" Lee lifted his eyebrows. "Well, yeah. I noticed you both had very small suitcases, so I figured we could get some clothes for both of you, some toys for Amara, and groceries, of course." "We don't need clothes." "Really? It's supposed to have record lows this week, and you only have the jackets you came in." Lee cleared his throat, glancing back at Amara before fixing his attention forward again. "I don't want you to think we're a charity case. I can work, and I can pay you back for everything. I really don't need you to pay me back. I want to buy things for you. I don't have anything else to spend money on anyway, and you need it. I know you need it, so just let me give it to you. Wyatt chewed his bottom lip, studying Lee's profile. The man's frown deepened, and he sucked his teeth as he followed the street signs to the shopping center, parking the vehicle spaces away from the other cars. He turned off the engine and handed the keys to Wyatt, sighing. Fine. Fine. Amara does need a new jacket. The old one is tight on her. And usually I buy her a pair of Christmas pajamas and a Christmas Day dress. Okay. And what about you? Do you need a new pair of Christmas pajamas? Lee chuckled, a little blush touching his face. Nah. I'll make do with what I have. You mean continue walking around my place half-dressed? If you'd like. Daddy? Amara's pensive voice cut through their conversation, and Lee twisted in his seat. His flushed cheeks faded. Yes, my dear. When is Papa going to join us? Is Papa going to meet Mr. Watt? Oh. Her question zapped the easiness from Lee, and he turned to stone in front of Wyatt's eyes. Sweetie, we already talked about this. Papa won't be joining us for Christmas. It's just going to be you and me this Christmas. Amara sighed. Papa would like Mr. Watt. Maybe so, but he won't be meeting Mr. Wyatt this year. Are we still going to have Christmas breakfast with pancakes like Papa likes? No, because we have to make something Mr. Wyatt likes. I want Papa to be at Christmas. I understand. Lee shrugged at Wyatt and slipped out of the vehicle, walking around it and opening Amara's door. Wyatt sat in the passenger side as he watched the man unbuckle the inquisitive little girl and set her on her feet. Lee helped her into her jacket and zipped it up before he opened Wyatt's door. Are you joining us? Lee's pink lips twisted into a smile. Yes, sorry. Wyatt slipped out of the SUV, closing his door and standing beside Lee. Mr. Watt. I want to hold your hand. Amara wiggled her fingers. Oh. Wyatt exhaled an uneasy chuckle. Okay then. They shifted their order, so Amara took the center and both men held one of her icy little hands. They lifted her over puddles as they walked along the sidewalk, and Wyatt's heart was full. They dipped into store after store until Lee held onto a collection of bags, and Amara only held Wyatt's hand. The little girl was pleased with the arrangement, and Wyatt was pleased with the pleasant expression on Lee's features. Stress lines disappeared as they purchased a few simple toys for Amara and the extra clothes she needed. The little girl picked out blue snowflake pajamas, and a tailor fitted her with a red and pink dress. When she announced her hunger, they stopped into an eatery with a covered play area, and Amara raced to the indoor playground, leaving Wyatt and Lee at their seats. Lee rested the bags next to them and took a seat right beside Wyatt. Thank you for everything. I know I say it a lot, but you're already better than her father. Lee bit his bottom lip. What about her father? He shook his head. It's nothing. I shouldn't have even brought it up. Wyatt rubbed Lee's shoulder. It's okay. So, I'm enjoying today. When does Amara need a nap? Oh, she'll need one after we eat, but she can hang on without it for about 2 hours. It'll give us enough time to get groceries and go back to your place. Perfect. I still have some shopping, but I can do it any time. What do you want for dinner? Anything, honestly. I don't want to put limits on your creativity. How much should I purchase, you think? Wyatt lifted his shoulders in a quick shrug. I guess enough to carry you through Christmas Day, at least. He offered, suppressing the hope in his tone. Oh no. I'll come out on the eve of Christmas Eve for the Christmas menu. Do you have any food requests? Wyatt shook his head, exhaling a little chuckle. For the last few years, I've been eating Chinese on Christmas. His cheeks flushed and he rubbed the back of his neck. Why? No reason. I was alone anyway, so why go through all the trouble of an elaborate Christmas dinner for one? What about your family? Wyatt's lips quirked in a light smile. They live away. Lee nodded. Mine too. He reached across the table and slid his fingers under Wyatt's, tickling his palm and then squeezing his hand. "We'll stay with you through Christmas. No one as sweet as you should be spending Christmas alone." Wyatt curled his fingers back as the blush on his cheeks deepened. "Of course. I should check on our food." Shaking his head, he jumped to his feet and staggered inside. His heart pounded in his chest and his pulse quickened. He adjusted his watch as he stood outside of the line, but away from Lee's discerning gaze. He was embarrassed by his own reactions and angered by them at the same time. What they were doing was wrong. Whatever brewing affection they had between them, it wasn't the right time or right place, especially not with Amara. And Wyatt still had boxes of his late husband's old things stashed in all their spare rooms, years of memories he wasn't ready to forget. He sucked his bottom lip into his mouth and released it with a slow pop as he glanced back towards Lee. The man had been joined by the inquisitive little girl, and she wiggled into his lap after placing a sloppy kiss on his cheek. After a short back and forth, the girl disappeared into the play area again, and Lee glanced around, flashing a smile when his eyes met Wyatt's. His smile sent electricity through Wyatt, and he turned away again, waiting there until he had earned spoils from his trip. He returned to the table with trays of food and drinks, and sat back down across from Lee, tucking his hands in between his thighs. "Sorry." "No, it's okay. It's my fault. It's just that you've done so much for us, and I really can't thank you enough." Lee picked at his food. "Yeah. Should we call Amara?" Lee glanced at his daughter and shook his head. "Nah. Let's let her play a little while longer. I'm enjoying the adult time." Chapter 6. They arrived back at Wyatt's place after an hour of grocery shopping while Amara dozed in the basket and Lee hem-hawed over various meats, spices, and vegetables. The chef only wanted the best ingredients. Wyatt purchased the groceries, and Lee placed them in the back of the vehicle after strapping Amara into her car seat. She slept all the way back to Wyatt's house, and Lee carried her inside to her bedroom. She woke hours later and played quietly with her new toys until dinner time, where she chatted with Wyatt until they had both cleaned their plates, insisting Wyatt help her with her bath and read another story to her. They had purchased books while they were out too. Wyatt obliged, leaving Lee in the kitchen as he performed a bastardized version of the bedtime routine. Lee washed the dishes from dinner, stashing leftovers in the refrigerator, and then he made dessert for him and Wyatt, turning a collection of raw ingredients into individual mug cakes topped with whipped cream and fruit. He also dug around the cabinets, fishing out a dusty 8-year-old bottle of wine. By the time Wyatt returned to the kitchen, the wine had been uncorked and poured into 2 glasses, and the mug-based desserts sat on the table. Steam curled from them, and the sugary scent filled the room. "Something smells good," Wyatt remarked, filling the kitchen doorway. Lee grinned. "I made dessert, and I opened a bottle of wine. I figured we could enjoy the rest of the night with something a little less PG." "Yum." Wyatt's slender form crossed the room, and his nimble fingers picked up one of the mugs. He tasted the whipped cream with his finger and sliced the bready dessert with his fork, purring at the taste. "You're an excellent chef." "Thank you." Lee picked up the other dessert and one of the glasses of wine. "So, how about you join me in the living room?" With a wink, he slipped past Wyatt and collapsed into the couch. Wyatt joined him, occupying the other side and resting his feet on the coffee table. He ate a few more bites of the dessert, moaning around his fork. My God, you're so good. And the wine pairs perfectly, like you planned it." "Maybe I did. I wouldn't be surprised. You're very talented." "Spoiler. I didn't." Lee chuckled. "I got lucky." Wyatt smiled as he continued eating the dessert. "I like you're lucky. So is this what parents do after children go to bed?" "Sometimes. When Amara goes to bed, I like to enjoy the silence." "Understandable." Wyatt downed the rest of his wine in 3 large gulps before pouring himself more. His eyes became glassy halfway through the second glass. "I was going to adopt a little girl," he blurted out, blue eyes trailing back to Lee's form. "Yeah?" Lee had finished his first glass and idly nursed his second. He didn't make a habit of drinking, but as the wine filled his body, his muscles relaxed and his worries dissolved. It was the first time since being away from his husband where he felt relaxed. No, ex-husband. It was ex-husband. Wyatt nodded. It fell through, he chewed his bottom lip, words trailing off. His eyes brimmed with tears. It fell through when my husband was diagnosed with cancer. I'm sorry, Lee whispered, swiping tears from Wyatt's cheek. His touch had the opposite effect though, and a flood of tears streamed down Wyatt's face. I'm sorry, he sobbed, covering his mouth with a shaking hand. Don't be. Lee placed his drink on the coffee table and dragged Wyatt closer, wrapping one arm around his slender torso and rubbing his side with the other. It's okay, he cooed. I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want you to think, Wyatt shook his head. We all have baggage. Lee held Wyatt close to him, resting his chin on his head after sweeping his lips along the back of his neck. It was accidental, but it sent electricity through him, sparks igniting in his belly. I told you. You've already been a better father to Amara in the last few days than her own father has been in the last few years. I guess. You have. Lee's features screwed up. He's selfish and no good. He'd rather spend every penny he has gambling and drinking than spend time with his family. I spent so many nights waiting up for a man who got home and stumbled into the door drunk off his ass and broke down to his last few dollars. Wyatt twisted around, dragging bleary eyes up to Lee. You don't deserve that. I know. He glanced at Lee's lips and back into his eyes before he kissed him. Lee's breath hitched, but then he moaned into the kiss, lifting a hand to the back of Wyatt's head and holding him in place as he tasted the sweet dessert and tangy wine from his lips. When the kiss broke, Lee sucked in a breath. Are you okay? Wyatt nodded. I'm better than okay. I haven't been this alive since before he passed away. I want you. The rich man fought with his clothes, shedding them as he pressed his lips into Lee's again. He went from meek and a little shy to ravenous, and Lee's head spun. His arousal raced up on him. It had been years since he had felt truly wanted. Sure, he had fucked Amara's father regularly, but it was a service, an agreed-upon act that he wanted over as quickly as possible. This tryst with Wyatt was different. As Wyatt threw his clothes aside and exposed winter-pale skin, Lee's excitement and hunger grew. He gripped Wyatt's sides and bent forward, sweeping his lips along the smaller man's collarbone and down to hardened nipples. Wyatt moaned, resting a hand on Lee's shoulder, digging blunt nails into his back. More. Please, Wyatt begged. His bright blue eyes fluttered closed as Lee ripped away the last bits of fabric and continued his new expedition, charting a path down Wyatt's plush body. He was soft in all the right places. Lee gripped his fleshy hips and walked his fingers back to his ass, gripping it too, and leaving a trail of red behind. Wyatt bruised easily. It was Lee's turn to groan. He laid Wyatt back on the couch and covered him, stealing a kiss for himself. You're beautiful, he whispered. Another kiss. Thank you. Wyatt's desperate fingers explored Lee's tanned skin, skating over his corded shoulders and down his swollen biceps. Lee connected their bodies, lining up one hard cock with another, and rolled his hips against Wyatt. Wyatt hooked plush legs around Lee's body, twining his leg around Lee's thigh and arching into him. Their game woke up his hunger, and he thrashed under Lee, desperate for stimulation. Oh my God! Wyatt's cheeks reddened, and the blush traveled down his neck to his shoulders. What? Lee's casual movements continued. His nostrils flared, and he let out an explosive breath. And nothing. I want you. That's all. I want you too. I wanted you when we first met, do you remember? Lee rolled his hips against Wyatt in a smooth, casual stroke. The recipe for pleasure was memorized, etched in the back of his mind, next to the perfect simple bread recipe and the base for a heartwarming stew. It was a basic recipe, covering the necessities but leaving room for personalization. Lee knew to listen, to respond, and to communicate, but what he did with the information Wyatt gave him was all his own. It was up to him to turn the raw ingredients into something magical, and he was ready and eager for the task. He gripped the side of the couch and stretched his torso, muscles flexing as he adjusted his position and planted spare kisses along Wyatt's neck, wringing fresh moans from his throat, adding sugar to their recipe. Wyatt clawed his back, adding spice. Their bodies worked together, falling into a graceful rhythm, creating friction between them, until Wyatt's heart pounded against Lee's chest, and Lee's hot breath cooled Wyatt's sweaty shoulder. "You getting close, baby?" Lee asked, voice thick with his own arousal, eyebrows knit with frustration. "Oh. Yes. Oh God. Oh fuck. I'm," Wyatt stammered as another spare kiss sent him over the edge. His hips stalled, hovering above the couch as his muscles seized. His cock pulsed against Lee's belly, and Lee's mouth watered. His eyes rolled back, and he captured his bottom lip between his teeth. He had never been so hungry for another person, but the scent of Wyatt's steamy cum had him hungry for a taste. He wanted Wyatt's sticky cum on his tongue and down his throat. He wanted to drink every drop of him until he was spent and empty. Those thoughts and Wyatt squirming and moaning under him carried him over the edge too. His cock exploded with ropes of cum, complementing Wyatt's sticky mess between their bodies. Wyatt sobbed as his orgasm released him, throwing his head back and melting into the couch. Lee uncovered him and snatched his shirt off the floor, palming his cock as he panted. "We should." "Go again," Wyatt whispered. His sweaty shoulders shuddered, and he licked his lips as he watched Lee. But in the bedroom. In mine." He stammered his words as he flicked his blue eyes down the hall. "In a second. I don't think I can." Lee chuckled and approached Wyatt again, sealing his lips over the other man's. "I might clean up first. Then another round." Wyatt moaned into the kiss, cradling Lee's face until he retreated. "Perfect." Chapter 7. Wyatt rolled over in the bed he had shared with his late husband, cracking his eyes open and sucking in a startled breath when his eyes landed on Lee. The previous night came back in a rush as the fog of sleep cleared. He remembered Lee's body over him, waking him up with pleasure. Wyatt had only ever been with his husband, and Lee was so different from Ricky. Lee was sensual and casual. He focused on things Ricky had brushed over, and he enjoyed every inch of Wyatt's body. His skin still burned from Lee's expert touch, but now his heart ached too. Ricky's things were still in his drawers, his clothes still hung in the closet, and Wyatt had taken another man in there, his bed. A perfect man, of course, with a perfect, sweet young child, but it was still another man. Wyatt warred with himself, but Lee instinctively pulled him close, wrapping an arm around his body and nestling his face between the pillows and Wyatt's neck, warm breath tickling his skin. He trapped Wyatt against him, but Wyatt wasn't looking for an exit either. He dipped back into a light doze, until Amara's shrill voice woke him up again. The little girl tramped down the hall, screaming her father's name at the top of her lungs. "Daddy! Daddy!" she cried, rousing Lee from his hard slumber. "In here, sweetheart." Lee's voice cracked over his words, and a frustrated expression toyed on his face as the little girl burst into Wyatt's bedroom. She was relieved at first, but then she looked between the pair of them and her emotions flipped the other way. Her pale cheeks bloomed with color and she threw her stuffed animal down. "He's in Papa's spot." She wagged her finger at Wyatt. "No, Lee rubbed his hands down his face. "I'm so sorry," he whispered to Wyatt as he slipped from under the sheets, clad in a stretched pair of briefs and nothing else. His smooth chest rippled with muscles as he moved across the room, throwing on a shirt and then approaching his child. "Why were you screaming? Are you hungry? I left food on the coffee table for you." "I ate it." Wyatt blinked and mentally scanned over the previous night. They had dessert on the couch, and dessert turned into something more. Then Wyatt had relaxed while Lee cleaned up from their dessert, and they stumbled into his room for another session. He didn't remember much after their second session. "Okay, good. Are you upset?" "I want Papa. Papa makes better breakfast than you do. He lets me have Saval." "Well, Papa's not here, so you're not getting cereal." Wyatt closed his eyes, dropping back on the bed and rubbing his forehead. Listening to their conversation was heartbreaking, but the little girl was blocking the door, so Wyatt was trapped. Amara accepted the logic of Lee's answer with silence. Is there anything else? Santa won't find us here. There's no Christmas tree and no chimney. Santa can find you anywhere. He's magical. We send Santa a new letter. Amara? Santa knows where you are. Your presents will be here. The girl exploded into a broken explanation, and Wyatt only caught a few words. Papa, Pony, and Santa stood out, but the rest was garbled with emotions Lee desperately resolved. After a tantrum and a round of tears, Amara left the bedroom, dragging her stuffed animal across the ground as she went. Lee closed the door behind her and looked at Wyatt, scratching the back of his head. Sorry. No, don't be. I know it's hard on her, and we shouldn't have. I enjoyed last night, Lee cut in, and I was hoping for a round 3 this morning. Oh. Wyatt flushed. He cleared his throat. We probably shouldn't, actually. It's already mid-morning. True. Another time then. Lee ripped his shirt over his head. I'm going to take a quick shower if you don't mind. No. Not at all. He watched Lee disappear in the bedroom, chewing his lips in thought until he came up with an idea and chased after the other man, knocking on the bathroom door before poking his head in. A glass shower door separated their bodies, and Lee swiped through the fog when Wyatt peeked into the bathroom. Yeah, he called. Yes. Hi, I had an idea. I know a woman who does an in-home daycare. I was thinking, maybe we could see if she'll take Amara for the day, and we can get a Christmas tree and presents and make it a bit more festive in here. I have decorations somewhere too. Lee rumbled, not offering an immediate reply, and Wyatt's anxiety spiked. We don't have to. I just thought it would be fun, and she'd enjoy spending time with kids her own age. You know her? Yeah. I know her. She's a great woman. She's patient and Amara will love her. Also, I think you need some time off. It's a holiday for you too, so I want to make you feel special as well. Me. Lee chuckled. You don't have to make me feel special. It's too late. I was thinking, once we drop Amara off, we could have lunch at my favorite restaurant. I haven't been there in a few years, but I used to go weekly. With your husband? Wyatt's breath hitched. It's okay, you can mention him. We all have a past and he's part of yours. Wyatt nodded. Yes. I used to go with my husband. It was my favorite place, but he went with me anyway. It's rather fancy, with a menu that changes seasonally. I think you'd enjoy it. It sounds nice. He peeked his head from behind the fogged glass. His dark hair clung to his square face, and water rolled over his tawny skin. Thanks. You're welcome. Wyatt flushed. I should make breakfast. You can make breakfast? I thought you didn't cook. I was going to try. I think if cereal is her favorite meal, all I have to do is make something full of sugar to make her happy. Lee snorted. Well, she's a kid, so basically, yeah. Perfect. I'll make her sugary oatmeal then. Or perhaps French toast. Don't get ahead of yourself. French toast is more complicated than sprinkling cinnamon sugar on bread. I can make French toast. It's really not hard. All right? Then I look forward to it. Your new signature breakfast. Lee offered Wyatt a smile, overflowing with reassurance. I can't wait to try it. Good, because it's going to be very tasty. Wyatt nodded and dipped out of the bathroom. He dressed quickly and strolled out of the bedroom, joining Amara in the living room. The girl had settled on the floor between the couch and the coffee table with a picture book across her lap. Her dark eyes scanned over the pictures before she flipped the page and nibbled browning apple slices. Wyatt approached, crouching in front of her. Hey there, he cooed. How would you like French toast for breakfast? I want Saval. I heard, but I don't think we have any cereal. We do have French toast though, and it's better than cereal. She eyed Wyatt over her book, and he flashed her a wide smile. You know why it's better than cereal? No. Because it tastes like breakfast cake. Daddy won't let me have cake for breakfast. Well, Daddy put me in charge of breakfast and I want French toast. And I want you to help me make it. Will you be my kitchen helper? She eased her book closed, still with a discerning gaze in her eyes. Wyatt's smile didn't falter, and eventually she resigned, pushing her book away and bouncing to her feet. Yeah. I'll be your helper. Perfect. Well, let's get started. Wyatt led her to the kitchen and collected the ingredients for French toast, pulling eggs and milk from the refrigerator and the dry ingredients from the cabinets. He mixed the wet ingredients with sugar, cinnamon, and vanilla extract as Amara watched in a chair beside him. Okay, are you ready for your special part? Yes. She nodded. Good. You're going to dip the bread in the batter for me, and then place it on this tray. Wyatt placed a baking sheet on the other side of Amara and then handed her a slice of bread. Ready? She nodded again. Yes. As she dipped the bread, Lee entered the kitchen, lingering in the doorway, pushing his sleeves up to his elbows and folding his arms across his chest. What smells so good? Lee sniffed the air. Toast. Amara answered. Mr. Watt said we can have cake toast for breakfast. French toast. Wyatt ducked his head as another blush bloomed on his cheeks. Under Lee's gaze, he couldn't help it. It smells delicious. Lee stepped over the kitchen door's threshold and kissed the top of Amara's head. He kissed Wyatt's warm cheeks before realizing what he had done. Sorry, he whispered. Wyatt bit the inside of his bottom lip over a gasp. And no. It's okay. It's fine. He turned back to the little girl. You're doing great, sweetie. Let me get a pan ready to cook these in. Lee squeezed Wyatt's shoulder on his retreat. He placed a non-stick pan on the cook surface and grabbed the soggy pieces of bread Amara had already dipped. Strong arms flipped them after a few minutes and slid them off the pan when they were browned on both sides. Lee sliced Amara's in triangles and drizzled powdered sugar, tangy berries, and a few stripes of honey. When Amara finished dipping the last of the bread slices, Lee placed her plate on the table. She bounced in her seat after taking the first bite. Yum. Eat up, because you have a long day today. You're going to spend some time with kids your own age, while Mr. Wyatt and I do some errands. Are you going to tell Santa my new address? Lee shrugged. Yes, my dear, we're telling Santa your new address today. And we're getting a proper Christmas tree too. Mr. Wyatt needs your special help to decorate it. I am good at decorating Christmas trees. She bobbed her head, confirming her youthful beliefs as she turned back to her food. You're a natural with her, Lee commented, gaze focused on Wyatt. Thank you. I don't know. It kind of clicked. He shrugged. It does that. One day you have no idea how to raise them, and then suddenly it's the most natural thing you've ever done. Exactly. And she's an awesome helper too. I can handle it from here, if you'd like to take a shower. Oh yeah. I would. Wyatt jumped out of his seat. I'll be back for breakfast. I'll put your plate in the microwave for you. Thanks. Wyatt rubbed his hands on his thighs, stalling before spinning on his heels and leaving the kitchen. Chapter 8. Getting Amara dressed was a breeze after Wyatt had buttered her up with a French toast breakfast. The girl washed her face, brushed her teeth, and laced her shoes with pure enthusiasm before they loaded into Wyatt's vehicle. Lee buckled her into her car seat and draped a blanket over her lap for warmth, lying her jacket and her stuffed animal on the floor by her feet. Afterward, he eased into the passenger side and buckled himself in as Wyatt reversed out of the driveway. He cruised one neighborhood street over and 3 houses down before pulling into the driveway of another expansive house. This house looked like a cupcake and happened to live on Gingerbread Street. Lee peered out of the window at the house, nerves dancing around inside him. Amara was a safety net, he knew it. With the little girl between them, it was easy to be Amara's father instead of Lee, whoever Lee was. Honestly, he wasn't sure who he was without his daughter clinging to his leg. He loved food and good conversation, but it had been so long since he'd had the latter with another person, he wasn't even sure what single adults talked about. "We're here," Wyatt announced, glancing at Lee and then at Amara. "Are you ready?" "Yes." "Okay, well, hang on. Let's get you out," Wyatt continued, unbuckling his seatbelt and jumping out of the vehicle. He pocketed his keys as he regarded Lee. "Are you coming?" "No, I think I'm going to sit here for a minute. You two go ahead." Amara unbuckled her seatbelt and slithered out of her seat, grabbing her jacket and stuffed animal from the floor. Then Wyatt lifted her out of the vehicle, setting her on the ground with a grunt. "Oh. I'm not used to lifting babies." "I'm not a baby. I'm a big girl." "That you are, but even big girls want to be carried sometimes, right?" "I'm a big boy, and sometimes I want to be carried." Wyatt flicked playful eyes to Lee, before looking back down at Amara, stretching his hand to her. She jerked back and marched up the length of the driveway with Wyatt trailing behind her. The pair didn't match either. Compared to Wyatt, Amara was lightly tanned. Her dark hair poked out from her winter cap, and her strong features contrasted with Wyatt's softer ones. His skin was effervescent, and his blue eyes matched the sky behind them. When the door to the house opened, a gray-haired woman opened the door and she bent at the knees, greeting Amara with a warm smile. Lee watched them from the vehicle, eyes watering as Wyatt bid the girl goodbye, and both Amara and the woman waved to him. He waved back as Wyatt jogged back to the SUV and climbed inside. She was excited. "I saw. Is it hard for you? To leave her?" "Yeah, but not for the reason you think." Lee tugged his lips in a light smile. "But you promised me lunch at a nice restaurant." "I did. I actually was thinking we could leave the car near the shopping area and walk to the restaurant. It's not far, maybe a mile." Lee's smile grew. "Okay. It's a nice day outside, so yeah. A walk would be nice." "Cool." Wyatt pulled out of the driveway and drove to the shopping area, parking the SUV in front of a lavish toy store and then climbing out, finding the sidewalk and waiting for Lee there. "Oh shit. I forgot to ask you. How much is it for the daycare?" "Nothing." "She's doing it for free?" Lee lifted dark eyebrows. "No. I paid for it. It's fine. Today is all about you, Daddy." Lee shivered at the tease, electricity working through his body, singing his nerve endings and inspiring his cock. He scrubbed his cheeks as they warmed and scratched the back of his head as his hair follicles tingled. "You know I still owe you a round from this morning. We could go home right now and—" "No way. We're having a day out. You can give me my round tonight after Amara's tucked into bed." Lee chuckled. "What if I don't want to wait that long?" Delayed gratification. You can't get everything you want immediately. Laughing, Wyatt slipped his hands in his pockets and readjusted his scarf around his neck, tucking it into his zip jacket as he led Lee down the paved sidewalk. Fine. So what do you do for fun around here?" "Me. To be honest, I mostly work. It's been work for the last few years. It's been hard to get back into hobbies when the person you did them with is gone. Everything reminds me of him." "Everything." "Well," Wyatt bit his pink lips, "since you've been here, not everything." "Good." Lee smiled. "Since I've been here, I haven't really thought about my ex either." "Oh. Don't let me forget to contact my lawyer for you. I know you may not want to worry about it over the holidays, but I'll make sure it's the first thing he gets to in the new year. Have you considered where you want to stay?" "I haven't thought about it yet. I've got to get a job, and I've got to get Amara in school too." "Is it too soon to talk about the future?" "What do you mean?" Lee quirked his eyebrows. "I mean, is it too soon to talk about maybe you staying here? In this city?" "Oh. It's a bit small. The public school systems are really good, and the crime rate is low. It's kind of perfect for having a family." Lee nodded. "Yeah, sounds like it." "Yeah. I wanted to be here. I grew up in the city south of here, and well, I didn't want my children growing up worrying about playing outside or being out too late, or gangs or whatever. I wanted them to feel safe. It's a good reason to move here. The place we moved from was not bad. Probably not as safe as here, but it was still a small town. It was just, Lee sucked in a breath, small and poor. The plan had always been to move once Amara got older, so she could have a good initial learning foundation, but he didn't care. Yeah, basically. Lee shook his head. Sorry. I didn't mean to bring up Amara. We can talk about something else. Literally anything else, please. I don't want to be the father who can't talk about anything besides his child. I don't mind hearing about Amara. She's sweet and very smart. Yeah, thank you. So yeah. Lee winced. I don't know what else to talk about, so I wanted to tell you I really like you, and I know I didn't really want to bring up Amara again, but you're great with her. I love watching you with her, actually. It's one of the things I've always worried about if I were single. Understandable. However, because you mentioned it, there are going to be consequences every time you say her name. Consequences? Lee's brows shot up, but he smiled at Wyatt's playful expression. The other man nodded quickly, blue eyes dancing. Consequences. Okay, I'll play. Lee bumped shoulders with Wyatt, stealing a breath of his sweet cologne and the pine scent of his shampoo. So, what's a typical workday look like for you? I mean, if it weren't the holidays and you didn't have surprise guests. I'm pretty boring, actually. On weekdays, I get up around 6 o'clock in the morning, I check my email as I ride my stationary bike for an hour, then I go out for breakfast and coffee. I will spend some time at the hotel, of course, and then some time working independently at home, watching my money mostly. Then another hour on the stationary bike, dinner, and I relax for the afternoon. What do you do to relax? Mostly reading. I love reading, but sometimes I will watch an episode of something on television. What about you? What's a typical day for you? I don't have a routine like you do. It had been Amara staying at home every day, my ex getting off in the evenings, and me rushing off to work, blowing a kiss on my way out. I woke up with her, oh shit. Wyatt laughed. Failed so quickly. That is 2 punishments. I don't know if I can trust you. The way you're looking has me nervous. You should be nervous. I really am going to punish you for saying her name. Lee's skin tingled. From his ex-husband those words would have sent concrete through his body, but from Wyatt it amused and excited him. His sweet expression and boyish charms made it difficult to imagine him committing acts of violence. Punish me like how? Put me in the corner? Maybe. Tell me about the rest of your typical day. Cooking, cleaning, washing. Then going to a job to do the same thing again. Don't get me wrong, I love being a chef. One day I'd love to have my own restaurant. Yeah. It's probably every chef's cheesy pipe dream, but I've wanted a restaurant as long as I can remember. I've always wanted to do something of an Asian fusion restaurant. Asian-inspired and American-inspired at the same time. What would you call it? I don't know yet, but I know I want to serve lunch and dinner on weekdays, and add a Saturday and Sunday breakfast menu. I want it to have a family restaurant feel with a gourmet restaurant quality. Why a family restaurant? I couldn't have a restaurant my own daughter couldn't go inside. Makes sense. Wyatt opened the glass door as they reached the lunch restaurant and ushered Lee inside. The host grabbed 2 menus and then led them through the establishment, settling them at a secluded table near the back of the restaurant. It's good to see you again, Mr. Myers. Oh, thanks, Sanjay. I didn't expect you to still work here after all these years. Well, I usually don't, but since I'm friends with the owner, he needed someone to fill in for the winter, so here I am. The young man shrugged. An easy smile played on his face. Lee opened the menu, sucking in his breath at the prices. Not even the smallest appetizers were under double digits, and his insides knotted as he scanned the menu for the cheapest options, sealing his lips together as he browsed. "You are in college, correct?" Wyatt slid his own menu over, but didn't open it immediately. Instead, he fixed his bright blue eyes on the young host. "Yeah. My 4th year of undergraduate school. I'm really glad I took a few years off to travel, though. It's been easier to settle down since I've already gotten that restless bug out of my system. Thanks for the suggestion." "Of course." "Oh. I'm sorry. I heard about Ricky." Sanjay's face fell and he squeezed Wyatt's shoulder. "I meant to come in for the funeral, but I was in Japan." "I remember. I received your card." "Yeah." He bit his lip. "Anyway, I mean, you look well. And it's really good to see you. What are your holiday plans?" "Nothing exceptional." Wyatt cut his eyes to Lee. "I actually have guests this year. My friend Lee and his daughter are staying with me for the holidays." "Friend?" Sanjay bobbed his eyebrows. "Yes, friend." The other man scowled as his face reddened despite his protests. "And what are your Christmas plans?" "Nothing really. I'm going to have a friend's Christmas with Kwaku, I think. I mean, his family doesn't live in the States, and you know my parents moved to Mexico last year." "Oh, did they?" I hadn't heard. "Yeah, they decided to retire there, but I've got their house, so him and I are going to make up a nice Christmas dinner as friends." "That sounds nice." "Yup. Well, it'll be Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. We're going to go to the caroling in the park and decorate a tree and everything. It's going to be as Christmas as we can make it." "Sounds very fun." "Yup. I'm actually kind of excited, if I'm being honest. Anyway, I need to get back to it. Will I be seeing you at the park?" "Ah," Wyatt shrugged. "I hadn't planned on it actually. With guests and all." "Caroling in the park?" Lee looked up from the menu again, discarding it with a slight frown as he looked between the two other men. "Yeah, it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's sort of a tradition here. Didn't he tell you about it?" Sanjay fluttered long eyelashes. "He didn't," Lee replied for Wyatt. "It's nothing serious. Christmas carols, live musicians. It's cheesy, but it's a tradition. I'm sure Amara would enjoy going. As would I like cheesy traditional things." "Well then," Wyatt shrugged his shoulders, "I guess we'll be seeing you and Kwaku at the park." "I guess so." Sanjay winked at Lee. "Perfect. You can't be in Bakersville and not go to the park. It's kind of a requirement for all our visitors. And I almost missed it." "Almost? But you're saved now. Anyway, I'll be back around with your drinks in just a second. And the server will be around for your orders." "Thanks." Wyatt nodded, watching the man retreat before looking back at Lee. "Sorry. Haven't been since Ricky?" "Yeah, pretty much. I suppose it's obvious, huh?" "A little. It's okay though." "Sorry, again. I'm really trying to make this a good day for you, not talk about Amara and my late husband. A widower and a single father." Lee smiled. "What else are we supposed to talk about?" "My God. Literally anything else. Anything." Wyatt bit his pink lips. "I want to make this Christmas the best Christmas you and Amara have ever had." Lee paused. The knots in his belly dissipated at Wyatt's honest words. His truth shined in those big blue eyes. "Really?" "Yes. You deserve it. From what you've said about your husband and everything, you deserve to be treated, and I want to treat you. I like seeing you smile, and if I had my way, you'd never not be smiling." Wyatt had the monopoly on blushing, but it was finally Lee's turn. His face washed with red as Wyatt gave his short speech, and after he cleared his throat. "I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say." "You don't have to say anything specific. Let me make this a good Christmas for you, that's all." Lee thumbed the edges of the menu. "Honestly? For me, you kind of already have. Seeing you with Amara, I had been worried it would be difficult trying to move on, or her seeing another man in my life besides her father, but she likes you and she responds to you. There's nothing you want just for yourself, though. Ah. You've covered that too. I wanted to know I could move on, and the other night, I know this is crazy soon, but the other night and this morning felt right. Everything with you has felt right. I thought I was a bit crazy at first. No, you're not crazy. It's felt right to me too. Even with Amara. Perhaps a little serendipitous. Yeah. Lee's heart fluttered. Serendipitous was right, everything about Wyatt was right actually, and he knew it was too soon. He just left his husband not a full week ago, but his husband had been a placeholder for Wyatt. Wyatt was the man he had been waiting for. Yep. So, you're serious about making this perfect for me and Amara? Wyatt nodded. Even if it means singing Christmas carols at the park or dressing up as Santa. Lee laughed. She'd ask you if you lost weight, Santa. Oh, I wouldn't be dressing up for Amara. That would be for you. Lee's cheeks flamed. Ah. Really now? You're a young Santa. Santa lives eternal. I see. So what? I'm going to sit in your lap and tell you everything I want for Christmas? You could if you'd like. Lee laughed. I don't know, Santa. I think you may get a little distracted if I'm in your lap. We may not get very far into my list. I will get distracted? Wyatt matched Lee's laugh. With cheeks rosy from laughter, Wyatt opened the menu. Have you decided what you want yet? For lunch or for Christmas? Wyatt eyed Lee. For lunch. Something light. I think I'm going to go with a sandwich and water. How about let me order for you? Okay. Done. Lee handed the menu to Wyatt and leaned back in his seat, watching the other man with a light smile. What? Nothing, Santa. When the server approached their table, Wyatt ordered a meal for both of them. He ordered something way beyond Lee's modest attempt to pick a reasonably priced meal, and he even included a dessert to go before handing in their menus and looking back at Lee. Were you always wealthy? The question tumbled from Lee's face, and the back of his neck tingled. You don't have to answer that question. No, it's okay. I wasn't, actually. Well off, I guess you'd say. My family was comfortable. Your husband was the rich one? He was well off too. We, got a pretty big inheritance when his parents passed away. He was older than me. They, owned hotels, so I kind of married into this thing. We ran the hotels together until he passed away, and then, yeah. What about you? Wow. Lee's chest expanded and he wet his lips. It's just money. Yeah, but I don't know. With the hotel and the big-ass house. I mean, my car next to yours looks like it's about to fall apart. Because it probably is about to fall apart. I honestly get nervous when you drive in it. It's fine. I put new stuff in it before I came here. I had to, or I wouldn't have made it. You grew up poor. Wyatt winced. I don't know how else to say it. No, yeah, poor is fine. And kinda yeah. I mean, my parents both worked 2 jobs, but I had a ton of brothers and sisters, so it was always tight. Plus, they are immigrants, and they didn't speak much English. Oh. We had everything we needed, just nothing extra. Lee nodded. I mean, they hate that I'm a chef. I should have been a doctor, of course. They definitely hated my ex. Well, in all fairness, I hate him too. When the server delivered their food, the conversation died away, and Lee ate a grilled salmon dish while Wyatt picked over small cuts of swordfish, blotting his full lips after he'd finished half the meal. When Wyatt finished his meal, he sipped a clear wine until Lee ate the last few bites of seasonal vegetables and pushed his plate away. How was it? Wyatt prompted, jutting his chin at Lee's empty plate. Good. It was good. Filling for a lunch, but exceptional all the same. Good. Wyatt handed his bank card to the server and nursed his drink. We should buy a Christmas tree, outdoor lights and figures, and stockings at least. We can tack them on the mantel." Lee nodded. "Sure. Is there anything else? We usually had a very modest Christmas, but I want to make you and your daughter comfortable, so if there's more, we can get it." Yeah, there actually is something else. Do you remember those little porcelain houses and the tiny figurines? They all came together for a winter scene? Oh, the ones with the bank and city hall. Yeah, those. My parents had them, and they kept them in the original boxes all year until winter. Then we built the little scene with fake snow and put lights inside, and the yellow lights would glow through the small windows. You want those? We can get them. Yeah. I want them. A few minutes later, the server returned, and Wyatt signed the receipt and accepted the boxed desserts. The two men walked out of the establishment, with Lee leading the way. One of Wyatt's arms roped around his, and the other carted their desserts back to the vehicle. They spent the rest of the afternoon dipping into various shops, collecting all the supplies to turn Wyatt's home into the picture of Christmas. They even purchased matching pajamas, Christmas hats, and a stack of typical Christmas movies, and they packed everything in the trunk of Wyatt's vehicle. Lee slammed the trunk down and rubbed his hands together. The sun had started its descent behind the trees, and the temperature steadily dropped. His breath fogged as he exhaled, and he spun on his heels, turning towards Wyatt. "I think we got everything." "Yes," Wyatt agreed, stepping closer to Lee. His wide blue eyes flicked up to Lee's face, shining in the setting sun, and Lee lost himself in them. Those blue eyes had promises, and they promised things Lee never had before: comfort, wealth, companionship. Love. Wyatt's cold fingers tickled Lee's palm, and the smaller man laced their fingers together, squeezing Lee's hand against his. "We can go home and unload everything first, and then go back out to pick up Amara." "Yeah, let's do that. You can stay and work on the tree and the decorations while I pick her up." Lee's heart pounded as Wyatt increased the little offerings of affection. He wasn't used to feeling wanted or desired, but at every turn Wyatt reminded him of the simmering passion between them. Especially now. Breast to breast, Wyatt's sultry gazes warmed him from the inside out, shaking off the winter chill as his jeans tightened. "Yeah." A little nod. Wyatt stood on his toes and brushed his nose along Lee's as he advanced to his lips. The kiss was gentle, but it glued Lee's feet to the ground, and he stood frozen in place as Wyatt slithered away from him and climbed into the vehicle. Lee's lips tingled, and his body ached for Wyatt when he disappeared. His body craved a repeat of last night. He needed Wyatt's sweet moans and the taste of his sweaty skin on his tongue. He also needed the closeness they shared afterwards with Wyatt behind him, arms draped over his torso and head nestled into the groove of his shoulder. Beyond their size differences, Lee felt protected with the other man behind him. Safe. Another thing he had never felt before. He rolled his shoulders, shaking off thoughts from the previous night, and climbed into the passenger side of the vehicle, letting upbeat Christmas songs fill the SUV as Wyatt drove. The other man even sang along with off-key lyrics laid over the recordings, until Lee's shoulders trembled with laughter and a smile dimpled his cheeks. "You're silly." Lee touched Wyatt's cheek. Wyatt kissed his fingers. "Do you think we have time for something quick before we start with the decorations?" "How quick is quick?" Lee rumbled. His earlier arousal rushed back through him, and in an instant his cock strained in his jeans. Wyatt didn't respond. Instead, he climbed out of the vehicle and strolled into the house, leaving the front door cracked. Lee followed, pausing when he spied the outline of Wyatt ripping clothes over his head. By the time Lee stepped inside the house, Wyatt had stripped down to his briefs, and the man stood in the center of the living room, bracing himself on the arm of the couch. "Hi," Wyatt murmured. A blush had spread from his pink cheeks all the way down to his slim shoulders and over his lean chest. "Hi," Lee rumbled, ripping his jacket off and kicking the door closed behind him. Chapter 9. They made adequate use of a solid 15 minutes, warming each other from the cold with desperate kisses and aggressive friction. Wyatt came with bubbled cries, filling Lee's ears with his own signature music. Lee followed Wyatt's cries with his own tenor grunts, and he showered the other man with affection, sweeping his lips over prominent collarbones, pink nipples, and lean muscles. He devoured him, and they both collapsed into the couch after 2 hungry orgasms. Panting, Lee dragged Wyatt close to him with one strong hand under his arm, stealing another kiss. "Fuck," Lee groaned. Wyatt pressed bee-stung lips into Lee's shoulder and twined his legs around his, pale against tawny. "I have ornaments and things for the tree. They're down the hall in one of the spare bedrooms." Wyatt circled one of Lee's dark nipples with icy fingers. "Is that a cue for me to get up and get them?" "If you don't mind, yes. Or at least start going through them. There are a lot of boxes, and I can't really remember which are the Christmas ones. I don't think they ever got properly labeled." So you're sending me on a wild goose chase, huh?" "I will help chase in a minute. I don't think I can stand." Lee laughed. "Good," he purred and kissed Wyatt's cheek. Lee eased off the couch, snatching his briefs and jeans from the floor as he moved down the hall, dipping into 2 empty rooms before finding a room full of stacked boxes. With a low whistle, he dressed his bottom half and moved inside the room, weeding around them before picking the shortest stack to start with. He developed a pattern. First he ripped open the box, then he surveyed the contents. If it wasn't Christmas-themed or related, he slid the box aside. If it was Christmas-themed, he pushed it towards the door. Lee got through 5 boxes before Wyatt joined him, dressed from the bottom down as well. The man combed through his short-cropped hair as he joined Lee, peering inside the box Lee had most recently ripped open. "I don't think this one is Christmas stuff," he commented, gesturing to the carefully packed ladies' head vases. "Yeah, I really don't think they are either." Lee snorted, picking up one of the packed vases and surveying it. He tossed it back down and nudged the box along the floor, bumping it into one of the previous boxes. "Oh hey. Be careful with those. I'm going to sell them, I think, at some point." "I was careful?" Lee blinked, cutting his eyes towards the box again. "You kicked it, and the stuff inside is valuable. It's a bunch of empty lady heads. It's kind of weird, honestly. These empty ladies' heads are vases, and I'm going to sell them online or something. I haven't gotten around to it." "Oh, okay. Well, first, I didn't hurt them because they're packed in 300 years of foam. Second, I didn't hurt them because I didn't hurt them. Please calm down." "No. Don't tell me to calm down. This is my house and my things, and I really need you to be more careful. I'm just asking you to be more careful, okay?" Wyatt's eyebrows lifted up, and his eyes brimmed with tears. His cheeks flushed with color, but not from embarrassment or flirtatiousness. This time it was anger, and Lee paused, flicking dark eyes up to Wyatt. The sudden shift stunned him, and he pressed his lips together, clenching his jaws. "I said I was being careful," Lee murmured. "Not careful enough, clearly. If you're going to toss boxes around, I can't watch this. I'm going to go. I'll be back later." Wyatt turned on his heels and stormed out of the room, leaving Lee surrounded by the towers of boxes. The front door opened and closed, and after a few minutes of still silence, a vehicle left the driveway. The SUV left, because the engine purred rather than rattled. Lee blew out his breath when Wyatt was completely gone and scooted away from the boxes, squeezing his eyes shut. A river of doubts ran through him, things he hadn't considered before, but Wyatt's sudden anger took him back to what he had left, and he cursed himself for it. Had he walked back into the same type of situation? Had this all been a game? Had he fallen for another narcissistic asshole? Did he deserve this? Lee slammed his head back against the wall and curled his shoulders forward as tears worked their way down his cheeks. His eyes puffed and his eyelids reddened. The trickle became a stream of tears, and he let it happen. He let them flow until they dried up on their own, and he steadied ragged breaths and peeled himself off the floor. After splashing his face with water and changing clothes, he dragged himself outside. Fighting or no fighting, it was time to pick up Amara. Lee plucked the keys off the wall and moved out to his vehicle, finding the car seat already situated behind the front passenger seat. He worked his jaws. He barely remembered the drive to the daycare, but he managed, and Amara flew into his arms, rehashing her entire day to him. She, of course, didn't care that he had spent the last 15 minutes wondering if he had walked them into a worse situation than they left. She didn't care about any of it, and on the one hand it was refreshing, but on the other he craved more silence, so he could stew in his own emotions. Lee buckled the chatty girl into her seat and drove back to Wyatt's place, listening to her recount her day and responding politely as his mind raced. His body put itself on autopilot, and after an hour he had a completed dinner sitting in front of his daughter. Then he breezed through bedtime, getting her in the bathtub and reading 2 stories before giving her a final kiss goodnight and leaving the candy-colored bedroom, pulling the door almost closed. He retreated to the kitchen, digging through the cabinets until he found discarded liquor, dusty and old and forgotten. He cradled it in his hands, watching the brown liquid slosh around before tucking it back in the cabinet and wandering back through the house. He returned to the storage bedroom and dug through the boxes until he found the ornaments, setting them out in the living room. Then he showered, changed clothes and crawled into Wyatt's bed, burying his face in the other man's pillow, drowning in his lingering scent. More tears leaked from the corners of his eyes as he entered an uneasy sleep. Memories plagued him, replaying instances with his ex, convincing him he was repeating the same cycle again. He managed a restless doze, losing track of time until the door creaked open and he bolted upright. His heart hammered in his chest, and his ears stuffed with cotton as the dim light from the hallway backlit Wyatt's frame. "Hi," Wyatt broke the silence. Lee eyed him as he stepped inside the room and removed his sweater and undershirt. Chapter 10. He couldn't take it. He knew it had been years, and he knew the vases had been collecting dust for even longer than the years they had been packed. It had been Ricky's constant lie. Every time he brought home another one, he lamented over the quality and promised he would sell it. It was a joke between them, except Wyatt truly planned to sell the vases. When he was ready, he planned to sell them. He just wasn't ready yet, and watching Lee toss the boxes around, he realized how truly unready he was. At that moment his house felt suffocatingly small and he needed air, so he grabbed his jacket and left. Well, after switching the car seat over. He drove in circles, taking himself to his hotel and sitting in the parking lot, and then he took the scenic route past the shopping area they had been at earlier, before finally returning back to his place and staring at the house. Wyatt wanted to be ready, because he couldn't have boxes of old vases and a new relationship. They were incompatible, and he wasn't willing to trade a possible future for his past. Lee made him forget about the unyielding emptiness that had ruled his life for the last few years. Lee made him feel whole, and his daughter was a bonus. When he finally dragged himself back inside, he noticed the stacked Christmas ornaments by the naked tree and sucked in a soft breath. The house was clean, spotless like it had never been before. Amara was sound asleep in her room, and with no one on the couch, Lee was sound asleep in the master bedroom. Wyatt pushed the door open and breathed a sigh of relief when the man popped up from under the sheets and offered him a sleep-drunk gaze. Yes, this was exactly what he wanted to come home to for the rest of his life. Nothing else. "Hi," Wyatt broke the silence, crossing the dark room and shrugging out of his sweater and undershirt, trading both for a long-sleeved t-shirt instead. "Hi," Lee murmured, tracking the other man with a worried expression. Wyatt stripped off his pants and goosebumps rose on his skin. He walked to the dresser, then to the closet, and then back to the dresser, digging through packed drawers before getting frustrated and returning to the closet a second time. "I can go to the couch if you want," Lee offered, throwing the sheets aside and scooting towards the edge of the bed. No. I'm sorry. I want you in here. I mean, if you want to be in here. I mean, I'm sorry about earlier. It was all me. You weren't being rough, I was overreacting." "Yeah." Lee nodded slightly. It's fine. I guess." "No, it's not." Wyatt inhaled a deep breath and held it in, slowing a racing heartbeat as he turned to Lee. "It's not fine, because you didn't deserve it, and I should have handled it better given everything you told me." "It's okay really," Lee's voice roughened. I couldn't breathe and I needed space. And I know it wasn't fair to you. I know. I really don't want to talk about this. Okay. Wyatt wrung his hands. We should do the tree tomorrow. Yeah, we should. Lee smirked a little bit and reached out for Wyatt. Come to bed and let me tell you what I want for Christmas, Santa. Wyatt chewed his bottom lip, approaching and taking Lee's hand. He slid his fingers between Lee's and fit himself between the other man's strong thighs. I'm supposed to be the one holding you, Wyatt whispered, brushing his lips across Lee's. Details, Lee teased, undressing Wyatt. Their clothes became a growing pile on the floor, and their desperation for each other grew as more skin was revealed. Wyatt dug his nails into Lee's shoulder once the last of their clothes topped the pile, and his cock rested against the other man's belly. The pink head glistened with a bead of precum as Lee's lips charted a hungry trail from Wyatt's shoulders up to his jawline. Important ones, Wyatt gasped. Hardly, but you can give me my Christmas presents right now. Lee's husky voice filled Wyatt's ears. Can I? I want you inside me, Lee confessed, issuing a little bite to Wyatt's shoulder at the same time. It'll be the first thing you get on Christmas morning then. Lee palmed Wyatt's cock. What about tonight, Santa? I've been good. Wyatt whimpered, shaking his head. You'll have to wait until Christmas morning, he repeated, voice trembling as Lee continued stroking him. Lee's gentle teasing turned into another lazy session once Lee coaxed Wyatt into bed and slithered on top of him. Their sex had only gotten better after the first buzz tryst. Their bodies fit together like puzzle pieces, and each new session compounded on the last. Wyatt hooked his legs around Lee's as their bodies meshed together. Pools of sweat gathered between their chests, mingling with pulses of precum and eventually pulses of cum. Lee collapsed beside Wyatt, and they both stared at the ceiling as their breathing slowed. Wyatt wet his lips. After we set up the tree tomorrow, I want to clean in here. Lee rumbled. The clothes. I want to downsize them and get rid of what I don't wear. You mean your husband's things? Late husband's things. I think it's about time I did that. I want to take everything to the men's shelter. Okay. Will you help? Of course. Lee rolled to his side and moved closer to Wyatt, resting a hand on his chest and kissing his shoulder. We can do it after the tree and before the caroling thing. Wyatt nodded. Yes, he agreed, soothed by Lee's calm words and soft touch. His eyes dropped closed, and he slept until Amara's high-pitched voice woke him the next morning. Lee had already showered and dressed, and he greeted the girl when she barged into the bedroom with her cheerful good mornings. Good morning to you too, he beamed down at the messy-haired kid. She had dressed herself in 2 mismatched socks, backward shoes, and the red velvet dress they had purchased the previous day. Good morning, Mr. Watt. Amara waved. Good morning, Wyatt groaned, pulling the covers over his bare shoulders. Mr. Wyatt is still sleepy, so how about we go to the kitchen and start breakfast while he gets up and showered? Then we'll decorate the tree, but honey, we're not leaving until later, so don't you want to wear the pajamas we bought instead? No. I want to wear the dress. You know what? It's Christmas Eve, you're happy, it's fine. Wear the dress. Go ahead and go into the living room. I'll be there in a minute. Okay. She scampered out of the room. Oh, Amara. Daddy. Don't touch the ornaments. You can look at them inside the box, but you can't take them out. Okay. She dashed off again, and Lee eased the door closed once she left. He chewed the inside of his cheek as he wandered over to Wyatt's side of the bed and planted a hand on either side of him. Good morning, Lee purred, kissing Wyatt's lips. Thank you for being patient with her. Wyatt touched Lee's cheek. Of course. I should take a shower. I'm still gross from last night. Sure. I'm going to get out some of the non-breakable ornaments and let Amara hang them on the tree while I make breakfast, if it's okay with you? Perfectly okay. Good. Lee kissed the corner of Wyatt's lips before pushing off of the bed and exiting the room, leaving Wyatt to his own morning routine. He showered and dressed himself, but paused before leaving the room. The old clothes nagged at him, and he turned back around, opening his drawers and digging all of Ricky's clothes out, throwing them across the bed. He tossed socks and briefs and ties. He dug out perfectly folded undershirts and littered them across the messy bed. It felt good. Freeing. He did the same with the closet, taking sections of Ricky's well-organized shirts and dumping them on the floor. Then the pants, then the suits, until the only things left were all his own. The room itself was infinitely messier, but Wyatt was lighter. A light smile played on his face as he joined Amara and Lee in the main rooms of the house. As Lee cooked, he sat down next to the girl, unwrapping glass ornaments and assisting her with decorating the tree, lifting her as necessary to hang the decorations higher up. They tacked stockings on the mantel, one for Wyatt, one for Lee, and a personalized one for Amara. "Santa knows I'm here," she exclaimed as they hung her stocking. "He does," Wyatt agreed, "and tomorrow he will have 3 presents for you." 3. Aha. 3, because I bought you presents and Daddy bought you presents too. We didn't want Santa to have all the fun. Oh. The little girl contemplated this, as Wyatt opened the porcelain houses and stacked them on the ground, idly continuing the process of turning his generic living room into the picture of holiday festivities. "And I want you to open one of my presents tonight. You can open it after we get back from the park. I can't open presents until Christmas Day. It's a rule." "Whose?" "In my house, during Christmas, everyone gets to open one present on Christmas Eve, and then the rest on Christmas Day." She was silent with contemplation again, before she accepted the new rules. By the time Wyatt had finished setting up the houses, Lee had finished an elaborate breakfast. Eggs, grits, waffles, French toast, fresh-cut fruit, and scrambled eggs littered the table. Lee fixed Amara's plate, giving her only her favorite foods by request, and then he fixed a plate for Wyatt, adding a little of everything before presenting the plate to him. He paired the act of service with a sultry gaze, flicking his eyes down to Wyatt's lap before back into his face. "Hi there," Lee teased. "Thanks." Wyatt blushed and snatched the plate from him, immersing himself in his meal and avoiding Lee's gaze. He was a silent participant as Lee coaxed Amara to eat the food she picked out, but after the girl finished half of her food, Lee gave up. She raced from the kitchen and returned to the living room, adding more ornaments to low-hanging tree branches. Wyatt hazarded a glance up, meeting Lee's dark eyes as soon as he lifted his gaze. Lee grinned. "Hi there," he said again, this time adding a wink to his tease. "Do you still want to clean your closets and drawers?" "Oh yeah, I already did, actually. Now we just need to sort everything for donation." "Ah." Lee nodded. "How does it feel?" "Good, actually. Refreshing. Freeing. I feel free, the same way you're going to feel once you call my lawyer and get your divorce process started." "Yeah, I was going to do it after Christmas. I don't want to ruin his holiday season." Wyatt shook his head and pulled his cell phone out of his pocket, dialing his lawyer's number. "He ruined a lot more than a holiday season for you, so I don't think his feelings matter." He passed his cell phone across the table, searching Lee's eyes. "Do it, then meet me upstairs, okay?" Lee looked at the 10-digit number on the screen, and then back up at Wyatt, puckering his lips and sucking his teeth. "You can? Think about yourself and Amara. Do you want to spend another Christmas married to this guy? I won't be able to get a divorce overnight. Perhaps not, but the process will have been started. It won't be on the to-do list anymore." Wyatt tapped his cell phone screen. "I'll be upstairs. Join me when you're done." With a reluctant sigh, Lee nodded. "Fine. I'll do it." "Good." Wyatt slithered out of his seat, plucking a few berries from the sweating stack, and pushed them past his lips, giving them a berry red tint. Lee eyed him. "You're teasing." "Perhaps." He lifted his chin and slipped out of the room, racing back to his bedroom after grabbing trash bags from the utility closet. He separated the clothes based on the worth and the quality, throwing all of Ricky's old suits into one bag while putting his lounge clothes in another. When he was done, he had 3 bags of suits and 4 bags of lounge clothes and underwear. He dragged the 7 bags to the entrance and collapsed against the wall as Lee entered. Done. Me too. Wyatt straightened up, wiping his brow. How'd the conversation go? He explained all the proceedings, and we discussed custody of Amara and everything. Truly, I'm the most nervous about custody for my daughter, but he said if I had been the primary caregiver for her, then it's not going to make sense for him to receive custody. I agree with him. It wouldn't make sense if you've been taking care of her all this time. Yeah. Lee shrugged and eyed the bags. Someone had a lot of clothes, huh? A bit? So I separated them. The suits are here, Wyatt touched the bags, and I want to donate these to a men's shelter, like I said. Then the rest of the underclothes or whatever, I figured they could go to a thrift store. It can all go to a men's shelter. Men still need basics, Lee laughed, kissing Wyatt's cheek. You're sweet. Is this everything? I can start loading up if you want to try to get Amara dressed and ready to go. Is it going to be difficult? Should I offer to load the vehicle? Lee grinned. Nope, it shouldn't be too hard, but she does need to take a little after-breakfast wash-up and needs her teeth brushed. Oh, I'm officially a caretaker now. Lee smiled. She likes you and I like you. I don't see why you wouldn't be. Plus, if I'm going to be staying here while I get back on my feet, Lee snatched up a bag. Wyatt murmured, then blinked. Wait, you're staying here? Oh. Yeah, I figured since you kind of left it open, it would be okay if I did. Yes. Yes, it's fine. You can stay here. I'd love to have you. I love your home-cooked meals every morning and night. Well, those might go away once I find a job depending on the hours, but I'll still try to make up something for you. Anyway, let me load up. I guess we can talk about all the details a little later. Right now we should be enjoying the holidays. Right. Wyatt chirped as Lee exited the bedroom, carrying a bag down the hall and to the front door. The smaller man followed after Lee, his heart pounding still at the man's earlier confession. He shouldn't be so excited, but he couldn't help himself. He wanted Lee around. Technically, he never wanted Lee out of his sight, not for long anyway, and he wanted to come home and crawl into bed next to the man, sleep next to him all night and wake up, looking into his boyish features. Lee shuffled out of the door into the chilly air, and Wyatt turned to Amara, who was engrossed in a game of blocks. He coaxed her out of her concentration and into the bathroom, assisting her with washing her face, brushing her long brown curls, and brushing her teeth. He spot-cleaned her dress and picked out matching stockings and shoes for her. I want pigtails, she announced after Wyatt clasped her black Mary Janes. Well, okay. Yes, you can get pigtails. Wyatt sucked in his breath as she skipped back to the bathroom, and he crunched his eyebrows, messily parting the center of her hair and raking dark locks in one hand. He fumbled with the hair tie, fitting it around her hair and then stepping back, surveying his work with a frown. It wasn't good. Her rich curls bunched against her scalp, and the ponytail hung awkwardly over her shoulder. His attempts at the second side yielded a second, uneven, lumpy ponytail. He tried 2 more times, fixing and adjusting the 2 ponytails, until Lee popped his head into the bathroom. Cars loaded. You ready? He studied Wyatt's face before looking down at Amara. Oh. I know it's bad, okay? I've never done hair before. Lee chuckled. It looks great. It just needs ribbons. Didn't some hairpieces come with the dress? He offered, a smile growing on his face. Maybe. Wyatt dug through the drawers until he found a pair of red and green bows, attached to little hairpins. He slipped them through her hair, topping the 2 ponytails, and stepped back, chewing his lip as he surveyed his work. Pretty good for your first try. You'll get better with time. Wyatt shivered. His heartbeat danced in his chest. Lee talking about the future, even suggesting a future together, warmed his heart. There was something so effortless and easy with his words, too. Wyatt had been afraid to suggest or to hint, but Lee had settled into it. Of course, with his room cleaned out, Lee had space to move in. He had drawer space and closet space and bathroom space. He chewed his bottom lip as they traded off care. Lee checked Amara's teeth and adjusted her dress on her shoulders before beckoning everyone out of the bathroom and doing a final check before leading Amara to the front door. Wyatt followed him, turning off the lights in the hallway, kitchen, and living room. After hooking his heavy jacket over his arm, he stepped outside in the chilly air, locking the door behind him and climbing into the driver's side of the SUV. "Did you hear the weather report?" He glanced back at Lee as the man lifted his daughter into her car seat and fastened the buckles, laying a pink puffy jacket on the floor in front of her dangling feet. "I didn't." "What did it say?" "Nothing really out of the ordinary, but there's supposed to be a pretty serious blizzard coming through tonight. The weatherman suggested we all be back at home right after the caroling." "Do you have firewood? We could build a fire." No, I don't think I have any here, but the hotel has some. There's a fireplace in the waiting area, and it makes it feel more luxurious for the fire to crackle as background noise while customers are waiting." "Yeah. Fires tend to take people back to comforting moments in their childhood. Smart business move." "Thank you. It was one of my innovative ideas." "It was a damn good one." Lee closed the back passenger door and climbed into the front passenger seat, buckling himself in as Wyatt turned the key in the ignition and reversed out of the driveway. The first stop was the men's shelter, and they walked the 7 bags of clothes into the establishment with Amara walking ahead of them. Inside, the men relaxing in the building greeted them, and the building's manager approached, surveying the bags before allowing the men access to them. After a short 15 minutes, the clothes had been fairly divvied out, and Amara had made several new friends. The men had been patient with her curiosity, and they had told her about their own children as she fluttered around them. She was a blur of red movement and laughter, and when Wyatt and Lee called her back, she pouted all the way to the exit and back to the vehicle. Lee's face showed a flash of impatience, and Wyatt touched his shoulder, squeezing his corded bicep. "Let me handle it," Wyatt murmured, kissing the back of Lee's neck. "Thank you," Lee replied, slipping away from him and climbing into the SUV. Wyatt looked back at Amara, lifting the squirmy girl into the seat. "If we don't leave here, we're going to miss the caroling," Wyatt explained, offering reason to an emotional child. "I don't want to see the caroling." She pouted, kicking her legs forward. "You wanted to see them last night." "I don't want to anymore. I want to stay here. I like it here. I want to live here." "You can't." "Why not?" "Because," Wyatt sucked in a breath, "because only men are allowed to live here. Besides, all of your clothes and your pretty dresses and your toys are at home," he cut off, holding his breath as he buckled her into her seat. Lee glanced back at them, but didn't say anything. Amara contemplated her reaction. The gears turned in her brain as she warred between fussing and accepting Wyatt's words. After 2 grueling minutes, she resigned with a simple agreement and settled back in her seat. Chapter 11. They arrived at the park an hour earlier than they had planned. As the musicians prepared for their portion of the evening, vendors and restaurants littered the park, surrounding a well-kept wooden play area already covered with children. When Amara laid eyes on the area, she wrestled her hands from Wyatt and Lee and ran towards it. Lee closed the distance between them once Amara sped off and fit his hand against Wyatt's, sliding his fingers through the other man's knuckles and curling his hand around his. "You know, everyone in town will be here tonight. You could talk to the school teachers and some local restaurant owners too. I'm not sure what sort of job you're looking for, but you could start there." I could." Lee smiled, squeezing Wyatt's hand. "Ideally, I'd love to be the main chef in a kitchen. Well, ideally, I'd like to have my own restaurant. I think that's every chef's real dream, but the reality is when you own a restaurant, you don't get to do as much cooking." "This is true," Wyatt agreed, returning the light squeeze as his blue eyes stayed forward. They had garnered many looks, but not the looks of those disgusted by same-sex couples. The looks came from curious town members, and they focused that curiosity on Wyatt first, then Lee. "But I need funds fast too, so I don't want to get caught up in getting the perfect job. I just need a job. Have you considered being someone's personal chef? Like a cook? Lee lifted his eyebrows. Cook, but much more than hot dogs and hamburgers. Some people are looking for true gourmet meals made from raw ingredients in their kitchen. Really? They're not just looking to play out sexual fantasies? I don't know. I don't believe they're looking to play out fantasies. I expect that they're hungry and they want to eat. Women like them, so they can stick to their diets while having good food. Oh, so I'm going to be cooking diet food like keto or Atkins? Wyatt chuckled. If you don't want to be a personal chef, just say so. I want to be your personal chef, only. Oh. Well, then I may have some sexual fantasies I'd like to work out. I figured you would. I'm not going to put a pizza box over myself and tell you I brought sausage pizza. Damn. I was hoping for that. Wyatt leaned towards him, pressing icy lips to his cheek. Don't forget we have to hurry home after the festivities, because of the winter weather advisories. I definitely don't want Amara outside once it starts snowing and whatnot. I got an alert on my cell phone. I didn't forget. Good. Wyatt nodded and led them to a bench where they took seats and watched Amara run and play. The smaller man leaned against Lee, resting his rosy cheeks against Lee's broad shoulders, and Lee wrapped an arm around Wyatt's waist. It was a wholly different feeling. After seeing the vast amount of empty space in Wyatt's room, after he watched the man care for Amara like his own, something shifted inside Lee. The attraction had always been there, but he saw a future with Wyatt and he liked it. A future with Wyatt was safe but reliable, exciting but comfortable at the same time. He welcomed a relationship void of drama, a relationship where small disagreements didn't turn into screaming matches every time. He welcomed a man who actually took care of his daughter, and a man who wanted a family. Lee rubbed Wyatt's shoulder idly as his mind drifted through his own thoughts. There had been many times where he had taken Amara to the park all on his own, and many more times where Amara's park visits had gone from a simple family outing to a disastrous family day full of screaming and crying. When he was younger, he had liked it. He had wanted that back-and-forth tension, the high passion mixed with animosity, hormones and frustration. He had sustained himself on it, but now his tastes had changed. The youthful-looking man beside him was, for a lack of better phrasing, perfect. Wyatt complimented Lee. Wyatt was stable. Lee settled there, enjoying the man next to him and watching his daughter play as the sun dipped behind the trees. The bright blue winter sky darkened, and the moon ascended into the sky. This is nice, Wyatt cut through the silence as the temperature dropped. He huddled closer to Lee. It is. I guess the caroling starts soon, huh? Yes. Should we call her and find a place to watch? Wyatt nodded. We should. I've been thinking. Yeah? Lee straightened up and rubbed his hands together, blowing his wispy breath in his palms. About who I want you to meet in town. Mrs. Candy is the principal at the school, and her husband has a little catering company I believe could be really amazing with the right assistants. Oh, nice. Are they here? I'm sure they are. Everyone comes to this. I'll introduce you when I see them. Thank you. Lee stood up and slipped his hands into his pockets, staring towards the play area. He wasn't alone in his slightly worried expression. Several other tired and cold parents peered at the pack of children, each too afraid to break up the fun. What are we waiting for? Wyatt prompted, frowning as he glanced around at all the people. No one wants to be the first to call their kid. Why not? Because as soon as they know it's time to go, it's an all-out kid riot. You are being ridiculous. Wyatt chuckled and approached the edge of the designated children's area, crouching to the ground. Amara, he called, lifting his tone into a question. The little girl paused on the monkey bars, dropped down and approached Wyatt. What, Mr. Watt? It's time for us to go. We have to go watch the caroling now. The moments between Wyatt's statement and Amara's reaction were tense. Pregnant with tension until Amara exploded. She fussed and stomped and screamed, inspiring the rest of the children as their parents reluctantly called them close. Jackets were fit on, juice boxes administered, and discarded stuffed animals made their appearances. Eventually, Wyatt calmed Amara. Red-faced, he led her from the play area to the outdoor stage. Lee walked alongside them, an amused smirk playing on his face. "Don't smile," Wyatt snapped. "Why not? I warned you and you didn't believe me. I've never been around children. There's a lot to learn, Tempdad." "Tempdad?" Lee shrugged. "I'm Daddy, my ex is Papa still, so you're Dad." "Is this going to make sense to her? When she's ready to give you a nickname, I'm sure it'll be fine." "Does she have to?" Lee wrinkled the bridge of his nose. "I don't know, but my therapist said there's something in a child's development that makes them want to call their parents something other than their name, like an affectionate honorific. Like Dad, Daddy, Papa, or whatever." "Ah. So unless you have a big preference, like a cultural nickname or something, Dad is what's left." "I don't have any of those." Lee nodded. "Okay then. Tempdad it is." Wyatt's rosy cheeks flushed as he settled in the middle of the viewing area. "One of us can put Amara on our shoulders. My father used to do that with me all the time." "Yeah? Yeah. I always figured if I had a kid I would do the same, so," Wyatt smiled, meeting Lee's gaze. His honesty warmed Lee from the inside out, shaking off the settling cold. The first time their eyes met, it sent chills down Lee's spine. He expected those chills to eventually go away, but so far they had grown stronger. The connection had grown between them, and now when Wyatt met his gaze, emotions flooded through him. "Yeah," Lee groused, knitting his eyebrows together as his heart skipped a few beats. "So, what's the rating of the schools here?" "They're actually some of the best in the country. The public schools, I mean. We have a fair amount of private, but if you have an award-winning public school, what need is there for putting your child in a private one?" "Good to know. We can get her tutors before she starts school, so she already starts ahead of the other students." "Tutoring?" "Yes. All students have tutoring, and no child is too young for it either. I've never heard of tutoring for a kindergarten child." I know it may seem strange, but they still have things they must know. Kindergarten is as much as mastering basic techniques as it is learning how to interact with others." "Right. How do you know all this?" Well, I researched it before when I was considering adopting." Wyatt scrubbed his face and adjusted Amara's hood over her head, glancing down at her and noticing her tiny bare fingers. "Oh. Amara, do you need your gloves? Are your hands cold?" Even as he asked, he squeezed them, and before she could answer, he pulled a tiny pair of designer gloves out of his pockets and slipped them on her fingers. "You would have made an amazing father." Wyatt cupped her now gloved hands, warming them with his body heat, before letting her go and regarding Lee again. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Lee's excitement spiked again, and his temperature went with it. His cheeks warmed and the back of his neck tingled as their eyes met for a second time in the past few minutes. Wyatt's eyes promised festivities after Amara had gone to bed, and those unspoken words sent Lee into a little frenzy. The beginning of the caroling saved Lee, and as the first carol played, Wyatt lifted Amara to his shoulders. They sang along to the first few carols. Amara clapped her hands roughly to the beat of the music. On the song before the brief intermission, Wyatt leaned towards Lee, rubbing his shoulder and tipping his head towards an older couple, both with grayed hair and cherry-red cheekbones. "There," Wyatt motioned, "those two over there are Mr. and Mrs. Candy." "Ah." Lee chewed his bottom lip. "What sort of catering business does he have again?" "A health food catering business, where he delivers prepackaged meals to people around the city." "Prepackaged?" "I don't know if that's the right word. I mean he makes food and then delivers it to them. It's not TV dinners from the grocery store, it's homemade and everything." "Ah. Sounds like a smart plan." "It is. And he does things for specific diets and dietary restrictions too. A moment. Wyatt slipped away from Lee and Amara, slipping through the crowd until he approached the couple. After a brief chat, he motioned to Lee and guided the older couple close to them. He turned on the charm for the two older residents, casting them a sweet smile as he stopped in front of Lee. "This is my friend I was telling you about, and this is his lovely daughter, Ms. Amara." "Oh, Amara," the woman exclaimed, crouching down to the little girl's level and extending her hand. "It's nice to meet you. My name is Mrs. Candy." Amara flicked her eyes up at Lee, stepping away from the smiling woman and clinging to her father's pants leg. "It's okay, sweetheart." Lee rested a hand on Amara's head, sliding over her hood and touching her back. The woman kept her arm extended for a few moments before abandoning the offering and widening her smile. "Maybe another time." She nodded to Amara and stood back up. "I'm sorry." She's not usually shy. "Oh, it's okay. Sometimes it happens. There's nothing to apologize for." "So you're new around here?" Wyatt posted himself at Lee's side as the band resettled, and they announced the next carols. "We should move out of the way." "I am, yeah." Lee nodded, eyebrows knitting together on his forehead. "It's a nice little town, so I'm really thinking about settling here for a while." "It is a nice town, and you found one of the best men in the city to be your host. I taught Wyatt when he was in school, and let me tell you something, he was a remarkably intelligent student. Very shy and a little out of sorts, but, oh, he was a joy to teach." Wyatt scratched the back of his head. "Thank you, Mrs. Candy. You know, we should move over this way, out of the center, so we can continue the conversation." Wyatt pointed to the back of the viewing area, and strolled in that direction, clutching Amara's tiny hand as he walked. Lee chuckled. "I guess we're walking that way, huh?" "I guess so." Mrs. Candy chuckled and linked arms with her husband as the trio followed Wyatt and the little girl. "So tell me about yourself, Mr. Lee Chang. You can just call me Lee, it's fine." He nodded. "Ah. Mr. Lee, how have you been enjoying the city so far? Wyatt says you arrived a few days ago for the holiday season." "Ah. Yeah, basically. It was unexpected, but ultimately very rewarding so far. Wyatt has been a great host. He's taken to my daughter, and she's taken to him." The older woman smiled. "Well, we're glad to have you here. I haven't seen Wyatt smile so much since his husband. I think he's happy to have you around too. Maybe your unexpected trip was good for both of you." "Maybe. Maybe it's a little Christmas miracle," Lee whispered, turning his attention to Wyatt. The man glowed, outlined by the moonlight and with the stars shining down on him. His wavy blonde hair flew in the wind, and his pink lips and cheeks darkened as the harsh winds chilled them more. Lee bit his bottom lip, chewing it as he regarded the other man. It was definitely a small miracle, if one believed in those kinds of things. Lee wasn't sure if he did, but he couldn't deny the magic in what had transpired in the last few days. "Oh, maybe it is. He tells me you're looking for a tutor for your daughter. Is she especially behind?" "No, she's not. I assumed she was right on target. The tutoring was Wyatt's suggestion. I didn't think she—" "Oh," she gave a knowing nod, cutting Lee off with it. "He wants her to be extra prepared once she enters school. A lot of parents have early tutors for their children. It's a pre-kindergarten preparation." "Why is it necessary?" "It's not necessary, but recommended. I do not normally do this, but Wyatt is a good friend of mine, so if you wanted, I could tutor Amara a few days a week. Where are you considering putting her for her daycare?" I haven't considered it. I used to stay home every day with her, but that's no longer an option for us." "Oh, right. Wyatt told me this too. He implied that he was going to be watching your sweet girl during the day most days, but he knew she needed the daycare for peer interaction." "Right. Not to steer the conversation, but Wyatt said you have a catering company?" Lee lifted his eyebrows and directed his gaze to Mr. Candy. The man looked up, eyes widening before they relaxed. Well, yes, I do indeed. I was wondering if you maybe need some help. I figured Wyatt told you, but I'm a trained chef, but I haven't been working lately. I mean, unless you count feeding a young child, but young children mostly eat fish sticks and chicken nuggets. They do indeed, the older gentleman laughed, but because it's simple food doesn't mean it can't be good food. Here's a challenge for you. You ought to try turning a simple meal into something elegant. He wagged a finger. Oh, you got him started. Mrs. Candy shook her head, dangling earrings clanked together. If you will excuse me, I need to go talk to my new student. I didn't, Lee squeezed his eyes shut. I can't afford to pay for that, he hissed under his breath. Mr. Candy didn't hear him. He continued rattling on. For example, you can turn a simple chicken nugget meal into something worth eating if your nuggets are handcrafted with signature dipping sauces. Ah. Lee nodded. Do a lot of your customers want things of that nature? My customers, fortunately or unfortunately, have no idea what they want. It makes it easy and difficult to serve them. However, I am looking for a creative chef to join my team. I need more than a grunt worker. I need someone who will take initiative and come up with innovative dishes for my clients. I need someone who knows style and tastes. Mr. Candy looked Lee up and down. I think I could do it. I enjoy playing in the kitchen. The more creative space I have, the more I can be creative. What's a day at your business look like? Well, it's a bit hard to explain. How about you come over next week and spend the day working? I'll pay you for the day, and then you'll get a good idea of what the work looks like. Lee blinked. Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. How does $17 an hour sound for your trial day, and while you're in training if you decided to take the job? It sounds perfect. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I seriously can't wait. If you're as good as Wyatt said you were, I can't wait either. Lee smiled, tipping his head down before looking up again. He scanned the area for Wyatt and Amara, but he didn't readily see them. It dampened his happiness, but only a little. Thanks, he said again. I should go find Wyatt, actually, and tell him the news. Mr. Candy tipped his head forward. He's on his way over right now. What? Lee snapped his head back up as Wyatt ran over to him. Worried eyes studied Lee's face. Mrs. Candy rushed after Wyatt, taking large strides as she advanced on them. Lee. Wyatt grabbed him, gripping his thick shoulders. I am sorry. Don't be upset. Where's Amara? I don't know. We were talking, setting up her tutoring for the next year, and when I turned around, she was gone. Lee's heart sank, and all sorts of scenarios ran through his head. Children were runners sometimes, it was true. Amara had her phase when she was younger, but this was unusual for her. Lee's eyes darted around the area. Okay. He sucked in a breath. Okay. The caroling is over. I can have them make an announcement. I can do whatever, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I keep thinking about her out there possibly on her own and tears striped Wyatt's face. Shush. It's okay. We'll find her. She's probably not far away. Lee forced the confidence into his tone, touching and massaging Wyatt's cheek. It's easier if we split up. She's wearing a red dress, pigtails with bows, and black Mary Janes, he reported. We can make a big announcement. I will. You go look for her where you had been. I will look around everywhere else. We'll help. Mr. Candy took his wife's hand, and they nodded in solidarity. Thanks. Lee touched Mr. Candy's shoulder. Thank you. Thanks, Wyatt replied weakly. He reluctantly released Lee and raced back to where he had been. Lee's heart sped up when Wyatt disappeared. He could be brave for someone else, but when it was him on his own, the panic and the worries set in. His hands trembled. What if she had been stolen? Right under Wyatt's nose, too. What if it was some crazy child molester? What if it was her father? The last one stuck with him. What if it was her father? Lee's pulse pounded in his ears, and he dashed around the area, checking the opposite places as the Candies and Wyatt. He checked the playground and checked the numerous food stands, before checking the area with the musicians. No Amara. His anxiety spiked even higher, and he rubbed sweaty palms over his slacks. Lee made his way around the place again, before he heard two familiar sounds. He could spot Amara's cries from miles away, and Wyatt's tenor voice made his stomach flutter. A wave of relief washed over him, and he moved towards his daughter and his lover. His eyes landed on Wyatt struggling with the girl in his arms. She fought, she threw her head back, her hood came off of her little round head. Guilty. Wyatt said, "I'm so sorry. Amara, please. Your father will be here in 5 minutes. I promise." He went to. Lee sighed, stepping up behind Wyatt and rubbing the man's back, soothing Wyatt with his touch as he soothed his daughter with his words. "Amara? I'm here now. I found her in the parking lot," a stocky man said. His voice sent ice down Lee's spine. His own logic told him he didn't need to worry, but the stranger's voice, the little hint of a Spanish accent in his tone, took him back to his own past. He swallowed around a knot in his throat. This man wasn't the same. He wasn't Amara's father. Lee swallowed again, before fixing his attention on the stranger. "Thank you for taking the time to help." Wyatt bounced Amara as she calmed, soothed by the presence of her father. Lee collected Amara's shoes from the floor and knelt in front of Wyatt as he fit them back on her feet. "You should apologize to Mr. Wyatt. He's been a nice host and you scared him." "I don't care. He's not my papa. He can't tell me what to do." She continued kicking and flailing, but Lee ignored it. "It's okay. She doesn't have to apologize. I know this has been hard on her." Wyatt flushed even more. Lee turned a stern gaze from his daughter to Wyatt, rolling his tongue over his teeth and sucking them before resigning. "I suppose." Lee stood up again, posting himself beside Wyatt and focusing his attention on the two men in front of him. "I'm sorry. Jabari, this is Lee." Wyatt motioned to a slender, dark-skinned man with sparkling eyes. "Lee, this is Jabari and?" He flicked his eyes between the stranger and Jabari. "This is Dante," Jabari said. Amara finally calmed in Wyatt's arms. "My name is Amara," she announced, stumbling over her words. Lee bowed. "Thank you again." "Really?" "It's no problem," Dante murmured. "Anyway, we should get going. You guys have a good night. Wyatt, we should get together sometime. Catch up maybe." Jabari tugged Dante's shoulder. "Sure. That sounds good. I'll be in touch." Wyatt nodded. He waved towards Jabari, as Jabari turned away and strolled off alongside a man who looked suspiciously like Lee's ex-partner. Lee's heart thudded against his ribcage until the man was finally gone, and then he flicked his eyes to Wyatt. "Are you okay?" "Yes, of course." He brought Amara back to the crowd. "That's when I ran into him." "Ah." Lee nodded. "Well, good. What about Mr. Candy?" "I'm working with him next week. We should let them know we found her, and then I'm ready to go back to your place." Wyatt's lips tugged at the corners. "Okay." Chapter 12. "Amara, it's definitely bedtime now, my love," Lee called from the kitchen. He had shooed both Wyatt and Amara out of the room, despite the sweet-smelling cider and spiked eggnog hanging in the air. The little girl had received a steaming mug of spicy apple juice, along with a thick slice of homemade gingerbread. Lee gave Wyatt a warm mug as well, except it was filled to the brim with liquored toddy and came with a passionate kiss, a promise of more. Then he sent Wyatt back into the living room. Once they left the park, they drove straight home and holed up for the night. Wyatt assisted Amara in an early bath, as Lee prepared a quick dinner for them. The chef's main focus had been preparing a feast for Christmas, so Christmas Eve dinner was only a few steps above cereal and toast. Of course, Wyatt hadn't minded. After dinner, Amara had opened one of her gifts from Wyatt. It was a board game, which Wyatt unfolded and played with her as Lee continued working in the kitchen. They played 6 rounds, working together and solving the puzzle each time, until the clock struck 9 o'clock and Lee poked his head out of the kitchen. "Amara," he called. "It's time to get in bed. Santa can't come bring your presents if you're awake." "One more game," she replied, clinging onto Wyatt and peering up at him with wide brown eyes. "Please?" Lee turned to Wyatt too, and Wyatt chewed his bottom lip. Wyatt lifted his shoulders. "One more game because it's Christmas Eve, but only one more. Then you have to get in bed with no crying or protesting." Amara cheered, and Lee suppressed a smile even as he shook his head. "All right then. Do you guys have room for a third player?" "Of course." Wyatt smiled. "You can help us. It's a numbers game." He explained the rules as Lee took a spot next to Amara, kissing the girl's forehead before taking his turn in the game. 15 minutes later, Wyatt folded up the game and tucked it back into the box. Amara pouted, puffing out her chest as her lower lip trembled. But one more," she started, but Wyatt shook his head. "It's bedtime." His voice was firm, authoritative, and Amara responded. She abandoned her request for more time and assisted Wyatt in cleaning the living room, following behind him like she had once done her papa. "Do you want me to tuck you in?" Lee asked, lifting dark eyebrows to his daughter. The gears turned in her head, and after a few moments of deliberation, she turned to Wyatt and stretched her arms up to him. "Will you read me a story?" "Ah. Yes, of course. Go get in bed, and I'll be there in a minute." "Okay." She scampered off, and Wyatt approached Lee, kneeling down beside him. "Sick of us yet?" Lee teased, dropping his head back on his shoulders and curving his lips into a smile. He touched Wyatt's chin. "I think she's asked you to do bedtime every night since the first one." "I think so too. You don't mind, do you?" Lee laughed. "Mind? I'm happy to have a break. Besides, it gives me time to prepare your Christmas Eve surprise, Santa." Chefs don't leave milk and cookies for Santa. That's too typical." "Oh. A dessert? You're spoiling me with all this good food." "I'm trying. I've got 2 years to make up for after all." Lee kissed Wyatt's cheek. "Go read her a story, sing her a song, and give her another kiss 7 times. Okay? Is she the only one that gets another kiss?" The corner of Lee's lips pulled down at Wyatt's comment, but then he shifted around and urged the other man closer, balancing his chin on his fingers. "Just one more." He brushed his lips across Wyatt's, kissing one corner and then the other before kissing the center of his lips. A little sigh escaped the smaller man. Lee's tongue snaked out of his mouth and teased its way into Wyatt's, caressing the other man's tongue and retreating. Wyatt moaned, arching his back and leaning into Lee. "Please," he whispered. "Amara's waiting for you." He tapped Wyatt's lips with his thumb and pressed their lips together with his thick finger separating them. That kiss was chaste, and he felt Wyatt's cock against him. Throbbing. "Ah. I'll be here when you get back." Lee slipped away from him then, disappearing in the kitchen. While Wyatt adjusted himself and disappeared down the hall to Amara's room, Lee moved around the kitchen, cleaning dishes from dinner and preparing a gourmet dessert. He turned the idea of cookies and milk into something fit for an adult. He cooked thick chocolate chip cookies and turned half and half sugar, vanilla, and a shot of alcohol into homemade ice cream. By the time the cookies had cooled from the oven, Wyatt moved back into the kitchen, lifting his nose to the air and sighing. "Something smells delicious. Cookies and milk for you, Santa." Lee placed 2 of the giant cookies onto a plate and scooped 1 spoon of ice cream on the side. Then he presented the plate to Wyatt, slicing through the gooey cookies for him and offering the spoon to his lips. Wyatt ate the serving, licking his lips. "Is there alcohol in the ice cream?" Lee winked. "I said it was special. We should set out the presents before we eat this, though." "I already did." Wyatt fished the spoon away from Lee and ate another several bites. "But I have bad news." "What?" "I don't have any present for you for Christmas Eve." Wyatt's eyes glittered. Instead, you'll have to wait until the clock strikes midnight to enjoy a gift. Is this gift wrapped? Modestly. Where best should I unwrap it? In bed, Wyatt quipped back, taking the dessert from Lee and sauntering down the hall. He looked over his shoulder as he reached the master bedroom. Chocolate smudged his pink lips and his blue eyes sparkled. Are you coming? Yeah. Lee choked, throwing off his half-apron and racing down the hall. They finished the dessert together, and Wyatt rested the plate on the counter. Hey. Yeah? We have 2 hours before midnight. Wyatt slid his hand over Lee's chest, bunching his shirt under his palm and taking the hems. What should we do? I can think of a few ideas. Wyatt climbed on top of Lee, straddling him with one leg on either side, and bent forward, planting light kisses along Lee's jawline and down the slope of his neck. Chapter 13. After an hour and a half of his genitals against Lee's genitals, Wyatt lifted his hips and threw his head back. Their naked bodies had created steamy friction and a mess of pre-cum. His rock-hard cock hovered over Lee's, and he rotated his hips, humping the air as he forced himself to calm down. Lee chuckled, leaning up and sliding his hands over Wyatt's sweaty flesh. 30 more minutes. His comment was a tease, and a little laughter touched Wyatt's ears as Lee pulled him back down. The other man's strong arms roped around Wyatt's torso, fingers splaying across his back, massaging him between the wings of his shoulder blades. It was an intimate touch, sweet and mindful like everything Lee did, and it made Wyatt feel whole. He hadn't forgotten about his husband, but Lee made even those memories sweeter. He knew they would have loved each other, and him too, and it made it easy to move on, to open himself completely. I can tell time, Wyatt panted, taking desperate breaths as he settled against Lee again. Aha. Lee smiled. Another kiss. He laced his fingers with Wyatt's and stretched his hands over his head. For another 28 minutes, they cherished each other. Their bodies moved in a natural rhythm. Their heartbeat and breathing synced together. They routinely brought each other to the edge and back again, rolling through waves of pleasure. Wyatt finally snaked his hands away from Lee, bracing himself against the bed frame with one sweaty palm. 1 minute. Wyatt licked his salty lips and looked down at Lee. You really want me to? Yeah. Wyatt nodded, reaching for the side table opposite his own and fishing out a dusty bottle of lubricant. From his own side table, he grabbed fresh condoms. I hope that lube isn't 2 years old. It's not. Wyatt's cheeks warmed. It's just my favorite kind. It's organic and most similar to our body's natural fluid composition, so, with a shrug, Wyatt opened the bottle and squirted the chilled liquid on his fingers, sliding it between Lee's cheeks as he teased and fingered his hole. Lee sighed and placed one hand behind his head, flexing his packed abdominal muscles as he watched Wyatt. His cock rolled on his belly, stirred by the stimulation, and the head glittered with moisture, leaking more of it onto his stomach. You look like you're posing for a men's magazine, Wyatt whispered as he slid a condom over his cock and rubbed himself against Lee's entrance. Lee opened his mouth for a reply, but a soft moan came out. His deep brown eyes fluttered closed, and his long eyelashes kissed his high cheekbones. Fuck, he rumbled on the tail end of his moan, one hand reaching for his cock. Wyatt eased all the way in, adding more lubricant until he slipped past that tight bundle of nerves until Lee relaxed around him. Oh. His whole face warmed as he adjusted their positions again, awkwardly fitting between Lee's thighs and planting one hand on either side of the other man. Sorry, he murmured. His blush traveled down his neck. 4. Lee panted, stroking his own length idly as his attention stayed glued to Wyatt. Lee's thick cock throbbed, already pulsing with excitement. I haven't done this in a while. Good. Me neither. His free hand cradled Wyatt's face. Wyatt kissed his fingertips as his hips moved, digging into the backs of Lee's thighs as he pushed forward. Lee was tight and warm around him, a physical culmination of everything they had together, and he felt home again. He sank into Lee like a weary traveler, collapsing in bed after months of a journey, and in the dim light of the room, he drank in every one of Lee's reactions. First the man had been relaxed, bold. But as the session continued, as Wyatt found and hit that perfect spot, his pride dissolved, and guttural moans slipped from him. His Adam's apple danced in his throat. His hard cock pressed into Wyatt's stomach, and his ass tightened around him. "I'm close," Wyatt choked out, placing his palm flat on Lee's chest and sliding his hand up and around his thick neck. His other hand followed, fingers curling around to the base of Lee's hairline, and thumb pressing into the dip between his collarbones, dinting olive flesh. Lee didn't stop him, but as his fingers closed around his neck, he flicked his eyes open again and fixed them on Wyatt. A dusty pink touched his face, and his whole body jerked. "Damn," he whispered. "Me too." He fisted the sheets as his back arched and he sucked in ragged breaths, chest heaving and shuddering as his cock burst with his orgasm. 2 hours of teasing and a half hour of a connection, and Lee's cock painted his chest and his shoulders. His ass pulsed, milking Wyatt's cock as Wyatt bent forward and tasted the cum from his skin. Heavenly. Salty sweet. A little heady. Fireworks exploded in Wyatt's brain, short-circuiting it as his orgasm ripped through him. His mind fogged as unyielding pleasure coursed through him, until his muscles ached and he collapsed on Lee's sweaty chest. His eyes squeezed shut as a wave of emotion followed close behind his raw release. His eyelashes clumped together and he hid his face. Lee pet his hair. "Merry Christmas." He kissed the top of Wyatt's head. "Merry Christmas," Wyatt mumbled, voice hitching over the words. He matched Lee's lazy breathing until he fell asleep, waking abruptly 6 hours later when the sun spilled onto his face and the smell of sweet bread and spiced meat touched his nose. He cracked puffy eyes open and rolled onto his back, tucking the fluffy comforter under his chin. "Hi," Lee cooed. "I brought you breakfast and came to tell you that your young guest refuses to open presents until you join us." He kissed Wyatt's nose. "Take your time, though, and I'll see you in the living room in a bit." Wyatt yawned, glancing at the plate and then watching Lee retreat. Once alone again, he eased out of bed and nibbled the food as he moved around his room, hopping in the shower and dressing in Christmas-patterned lounge pants. His blonde hair stayed in wild waves around his head as he joined the pair in the living room. Amara greeted him with a hug and a sloppy kiss. As Wyatt sank into the couch, Lee sat down on the floor, assisting the girl as necessary as she opened a small mountain of gifts. Wyatt couldn't help it. Seeing the little girl's face light up each time she peeled back the wrapping paper of a new item filled him with joy. The items weren't all mindless toys either. Wyatt had focused his search on educational games, multiplayer games, and necessities. Donning a new sweater, skirt, and shoes, Amara contented herself with a new digital read-aloud device, listening to the stories as the device highlighted each word. Smiling, Lee looked up at Wyatt. "Thank you for all of this." "You're so welcome. She deserves it, and you deserve it." "You two have," Wyatt started before pausing, mulling over his words. "You two have brought so much joy into my life. I was a shell before I met you. I worked, I came home, and I slept. I was lost, and now I feel at home again." Lee searched his features as he spoke. Each word tore down his easygoing veneer until they were both raw, exposed nerves. He sucked in his breath as he cupped Wyatt's face, forcing their lips together in a bruising kiss. Lee poured all his emotions into the kiss, and Wyatt drank them hungrily, continuing the kiss until they were both panting. Lee's lips parted over silent words. Wyatt licked his lips. "I love you," he whispered, too afraid to say it louder. Lee smiled. "I love you too." Epilogue. 9 months later. He dropped the last box of hard, craft containers in the storage room beside the rest of the supplies and scrawled his name across the delivery form, flicking his eyes up to the driver as he handed it back. "Thanks, man." "No problem, Lee. These deliveries are getting bigger and bigger, huh?" "Yeah." Lee smiled. "We're getting busier and busier. Oh, speaking of which, we have some extra strawberry cheesecake if you want it." "Yeah, sure. My girl loves them." "Oh, I know." Apparently, she told Wyatt it was her favorite when they ran into each other at the grocery store. Wait. Wyatt was at the grocery store. The bulky delivery man chuckled, tucking his clipboard under his arm. I had him pick up a few things for dinner. Huh. Didn't even know he knew where the grocery store was. Lee laughed. He's getting better. It was a sad state during Christmas, it's true. Anyway, let me get the cheesecake. Lee beckoned the man inside the building, walking through the storage room to the kitchen. How are y'all doing anyway? We're really good. I'm actually skipping out of here early because he wanted to show me something. He's getting Amara from daycare too. Early? Nah. I mean, not technically. Usually she goes to tutoring after daycare, but not today. Must be a big surprise. I guess. Probably not as big as the one I have for him. Proposing? No. Well, sort of close. Amara started calling him Papa a few weeks ago, and I don't know, I've been divorced for a while now, thanks to his lawyer, so I got adoption papers for him. Oh yeah. My girl did the same thing with her baby. I mean, she presented me with the adoption papers, made it like a gift. It was real sweet, actually. She wrapped them? Lee lifted an eyebrow. Yeah. Noted. I should leave earlier then. Lee looked around. The counters were already clean, and the excess food had been put away. Well, everything he wasn't taking home with him had been stashed away. Just get an envelope and stick a bow on it if you don't want to spend too much time. Right. Thanks for the suggestion. Lee handed the truck driver a boxed piece of cheesecake, grabbed his own food, and walked the man to the door, locking the garage once they were outside. After a brief discussion about the next delivery, the truck driver climbed into his vehicle, and Lee fished his keys out of his pocket. He hadn't had the heart to let Wyatt replace his sedan, but Wyatt had insisted on getting it a full tune-up and a fresh paint job. Whatever Wyatt had done to it had the engine purring. Lee glanced at the folded paperwork on the passenger seat as he left Mr. Candy's residence. He stopped at the drugstore for a mailing envelope and a bright pink bow, slipping the documents inside and tacking the bow on the front at a stop sign. He met Wyatt and Amara at Wyatt's place, and Wyatt quickly ushered them both into his SUV, buckling Amara into her car seat and stealing a kiss to Lee's cheek. Hi. Wyatt smiled, opening the door for him. Hi. Lee returned the kiss, tucking the envelope under the seat and buckling himself in. How was your day? He asked once Wyatt hopped into the driver's side. Good. Very good. Excellent, actually. Is it related to this surprise you have for us? Yes. Wyatt's blue eyes sparkled, but he focused on the road as he turned left, right, and left again, taking them from his neighborhood to a new one. This neighborhood had older houses with more character, and Wyatt pulled into a bright blue house with yellow shutters and a yellow swing set on the porch. The front door was gray, and the colors worked together, but only barely. Good, Lee murmured, eyeing the house. Wyatt bounced with excitement. He threw his seatbelt back, dashed around the vehicle, and scooped the little girl into his arms, holding her hand as he walked up the shallow steps. Lee sucked in a breath, grabbing the envelope and hiding it behind his back as he followed them. Wyatt wrung his fingers as they convened on the porch. Do you like it? Lee squinted up at the house. I mean, it's a nice house from the outside. Oh right. Wyatt flushed. Well, here's the key, so I guess if you want to walk inside and see the rest. Do I want to walk in and see the rest? Lee blinked. Yes. Yes, you really do, because it's our new place. Excuse me? Lee blinked again. You already have a place. I do, but that was my place, and it had all of my memories in it, and, Wyatt sucked in his breath, I wanted a place that was ours for our memories. I see. I already had people move our belongings and furniture, and design it just like we'd fantasized about. Papa, I want pink in my room, Amara announced, cutting through the adult conversation. Wyatt's eyes closed in upturned half-moons, and he crouched in front of her. Honey, your room is pink with all of your toys. Even Wing Wing. Wyatt kissed her temple. Definitely wing-wing. He straightened up and offered Lee the key. Go on. Wait. I have something for you too. His heart accelerated as he pulled the envelope from behind his back. He turned it over in his hands before extending it to Wyatt, accepting the keys as an exchange. What is it? Hey. Open it while I look around, and we'll meet in the kitchen. Lee ducked his head as a blush crawled over his skin, and he fit the key into the door, unlocking it and stepping onto gray hardwood. Amara followed, and Wyatt brought up the rear, closing the door behind him. Lee toured every room of the house, holding his daughter's hand. He ascended a spiral staircase and glanced into Amara's pink room, 2 offices, a game room full of the little girl's toys, an entertainment room with a large wall-mounted television, an extra generic guest room, and finally the master bedroom equipped with a walk-in closet and bathroom suite. It left his jaw hanging open as he moved back down to the front room and turned into the kitchen. The kitchen was a chef's dream, and it had everything they had ever talked about. Every small fantasy Lee had whispered during post-coital cuddling sessions was in the kitchen. The knives, dual stoves, an induction top for safety, a massive refrigerator with vegetable and fruit drawers at the bottom. Tears sprang to Lee's face, and he pressed his fingers to his lips, spinning around the space. Daddy. Amara cried, cutting through his wave of emotions. Daddy, look. She tugged his pants leg and pointed towards the living room where a wire crate sat with a big-pawed puppy inside. Neither had been there before they entered the kitchen, but the little ball of fur chewed happily on a plastic toy until it noticed Amara. When it saw her, it abandoned the toy and hopped to its feet. Amara dragged Lee back into the living room, poking her fingers through the wire crate. The puppy licked them happily, lifting heavy ears to the top of its head. Surprise, Wyatt said. A puppy is a big surprise, Lee replied. So is this. He held up the envelope. Opened. Yeah. Yes, Wyatt whispered. Yes. He nodded this time and yanked Lee into a kiss. Wyatt's moist cheeks mingled with Lee's earlier tears as the kiss deepened and they devoured each other. Lee gripped Wyatt's sides, fighting through his blazer and his button-down until he found raw flesh. Wyatt groaned, breaking the kiss. I love you, he whispered, lips moving against Lee's and Amara. I love you too.